Hey guys, welcome to Green Bean Fiction. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Deku chosen by Omnitrix and fell for Momo? This story is 10 Aliens, 1 Arrow by LeonardoGeron. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button, as your one like motivates me to bring more stories, and subscribe the channel if you are new so you won't miss our latest videos. A family consisting of a 4-year-old boy and his mother, both wearing the same green color, can be seen. They are named Midoriya. They are currently at the doctor's office, awaiting the results of the child's quirk test. Inko. Okay, doctor, could you tell me my son's quirk? She asked, with the boy beside her playing with an All Might doll. Doctor. Well, first I want to ask a question. What kind of quirk do you have, and what about your father? He asked, adjusting his glasses and holding a clipboard in his hands. Inko. Well, I can levitate small things, and Hisashi breathes fire through his mouth. Doctor. I see. Well, I'll be direct. Your son doesn't have a quirk. When he said that, both green-haired boys' eyes rolled back, especially the boy named Izuku, to the point that his whole body froze, not noticing that he had dropped his toy All Might. Time skip. Finally, the doctor explained why he didn't have a quirk. After that, Inko tried to cheer the boy up by going out and giving him his favorite food, but none of that brought even a small smile to his face. Meanwhile, Bakugo Katsuki, Bakugo's best friend, upon learning that he was quirkless, began to mock and humiliate him in front of everyone. Bakugo. How the hell don't you have a quirk? He yelled in front of all his kindergarten classmates. Izuku. I don't know, but Kachan, I swear I'll do my best to be a good hero, or at least a good sidekick. Bakugo. As if that would happen. He pushes the boy to the ground. A Deku would never be a hero, and you never will be. He then lets his sweat flow, creating several quirks. Let me remind you, after receiving a beating from Bakugo, Izuku returned home with several bruises. This frightened Inko greatly to see her son in that state, but the boy said, Izuku. I just fell down the stairs. And so was the life of little Izuku. However, the dream of being a hero was the only thing that kept him going, only that when he turned 15 his life would change. 11 years later. Bakugo. Come on, nerd, run. Make it more interesting. Running to grab Midoriya. Izuku. Kachan, please, it was just an accident. What was happening was that Bakugo wanted to hit him again, and Izuku was running away towards the Kamino forest. Izuku. He lost sight of him, then clung to a tree to sit and hide. Why me? He said as small tears escaped him. I just want to be a hero. As he said that, the sky was already darkening, the stars and the moon were already lifting the heavens. The green-haired boy could only see this, but nothing could make him happy. However, he did notice a shooting star, and in his mind, he only wished. Izuku. Please, I just want to have a quirk so I can be a hero and save everyone with a smile. He stared at the star, but with each passing second, it grew larger. Shouldn't it disappear? He was right. It wasn't a shooting star, but a meteor that, thankfully, didn't hit him, but crashed a few meters away. Izuku, like any curious child, went in the direction of the object that entered Earth's atmosphere. However, someone else saw this. After walking for a while, he was finally able to find the impact zone thanks to the destruction it left in its wake. When he got close enough, he noticed something strange in the crater. Izuku. That's not a meteor. Seeing a round capsule, maybe it's a satellite. Then he slowly lowered himself to get closer, and out of nowhere, that thing suddenly began to open. This caused the boy to fall over in shock. After a few seconds, the freckled boy peeked his head out to see the contents of the sphere, and it was a wristwatch with an unusual appearance. Izuku. Wow, it's really cute again. He approached, driven by curiosity. When he was close enough, the clock launched itself at him. Ah! He screamed in surprise when the watch made him try to take it off, but the more he struggled, the more it hurt because it fused with the freckled boy's skin. Izuku. Breathing heavily through his mouth, but he was relaxing. What is this thing? He wondered to himself, but he began to touch it, trying to figure out what it did. After a few minutes I pressed the nut surrounding the protruding part of the clock, only to see that the symbol changed to a rhombus with a peculiar design. Just as he was about to press the diamond symbol, a scream made him lose his curiosity. He looked up to see who had screamed. Kachan. So this is where you were hiding, Deku. Then he went down to be a few meters away from him. When he was about to attack, he noticed a watch on his wrist. What's that, Izuku? I don't know, Kacchan, it's just that. Kacchan. Give it to me. Apparently, the ash-haired boy liked the watch design so much that he wanted it all to himself. If you give it to me, I'll leave you alone, okay? Izuku. Okay, just don't hurt me. He tried to pull it off, but it was no use. Kacchan. TCH, are you making fun of me? His patience finally running out, he pushed the freckled boy and then yanked on the device. Give it back to me, Izuku. Being in a situation that his brain couldn't process, first the chase, then the meteor, and then this watch that fell from the sky only to be stolen by his friend. In these situations he could only feel one emotion: no. As he said that, he slapped him with his only free hand, causing the other limb to fall from Bakugo's grasp and hit the ground. But that wasn't all. Apparently, the watch was pressed against the floor. Izuku. Huh, he felt his skin getting weird. Kacchan. What the hell? Noticing how small embers were sprouting from the green-haired boy's skin. Izuku. Noticing that his skin was changing, not only that, but a terrible fear invaded him. Kacchan, please help me. Kacchan. Seeing how the nerd was, he felt powerless and scared, so only his brain decided that he should run as far away as possible. Izuku. Kacchan, don't leave me. Feeling how these embers spread throughout his body. After a few seconds, the boy's face was covered by the burning coals. He would have thought this would be one of the most painful deaths, yet he felt nothing, not even pain. His breathing became visible as he touched himself, noticing that his skin had changed. Izuku. What is this? Looking at his hands, did I awaken my quirk? He started walking until he found the capsule, or is it something else? He wondered, looking at his reflection in the capsule, where the watch was. His appearance changed drastically. To begin with, hot coals completely replaced his skin and clothes. Then he looked at his hands, which were engulfed in flames, just like his head. Izuku. Anyway, I have to figure out how to return to my original form. Calming himself down so he doesn't do anything stupid, maybe this has something to do with it. Looking at the watch on his chest. After the incident, he was fortunately able to survive, as he was able to return to normal after about 10 minutes in that state. One day later, we now find ourselves in young Midoriya's room, where at first glance you might think he's a huge All Might fan, judging by all the merchandise. But that's not the point. After what happened, he didn't have any contact with Bakugo because he was still too scared to hit him. Inko. Son, are you feeling alright? The mother entered his room. Ever since you came home late, you've been acting strange. Is Katsuki bothering you? She said this because she knew how temperamental he was and noticed the bruises he had. Izuku. No, Mom, he didn't do anything. I didn't want to say anything yet for 2 reasons. 1, because Mitsuki and she were good friends and I didn't want any problems between them. And 2, because if Bakugo found out, it would be even worse. Inko. Okay, but remember that I'll always listen to you. Turning to leave the room, but, Izuku. Mom, wait, I have something to tell you. As he said that, he pressed the center of the clock, making the cylinder appear. Please don't shout. When he said that, he pressed the clock, causing him to change shape. His joints were stretching, his feet were changing shape, and blue wings were growing on his back. Finishing the transformation, he appeared as a tall creature, dark blue in color with some black Kacchan. His entire body was thin as if it were a stick and his whole being was covered by a robe, which covered him from his feet to his head. Inko. Son, what happened to you? Scared and at the same time fascinated by what she just saw. Izuku. Mom, relax, I'm still me. Looking in the mirror, how strange, I would have thought I'd transform into fire. Inko. Fire? I asked, a little more relaxed but still confused by what was happening. Son, please explain to me what this is. Izuku. Of course, Mom, it's a bit complicated, but... Then he went on to tell her about how he found the watch and his first experience when he transformed. He obviously lied about what happened between him and Bakugo, only saying that he was playing with some friends and got lost in the woods. Inko. So you're telling me that the watch transformed you into this and also appeared in the form of a meteorite? Pointing with her index finger at the watch on her chest. Izuku. Yes, Mom, I don't know why you're doing this, but I'm sure that with this I could fulfill my lifelong dream. While saying that, he tested. Inko. But son, we don't know where this came from. Look, it hurts you every time you use it. Completely changing her attitude. Izuku. Mom, please give me this chance. You know better than anyone. Gently taking her hands, that I've been waiting for this moment. Wouldn't it be great to use these powers for good? Inko. She didn't say anything, she just sighed and smiled, followed by a nod. Okay, son, I trust you. Izuku. Thank you so much, Mom. You won't regret it. Hugging her immediately. Inko. Son, getting chills when in contact with Izuku. Izuku. Yes, Mom, is something wrong? Inko. Could you move back a little? I'm cold. Breaking the hug and leaving. By the way, when you're back to normal, could you set the table? Izuku. Sure, Mom, this will take a while. When he saw that she had closed the door, he grabbed a pencil and breathed cold. I think I'll call you. Watching as the object suddenly froze. Cold. Time skip. After eating, Izuku asked his mother to take him to the city's beach, which is currently used as a garbage dump. This would be the best place to train with his new forms for two reasons. One was that nobody passed by there anymore, so nobody would bother him, and the second was that the garbage would help him in his training. Inko. Okay son, we're here. Opening the car doors, call me when you're done, okay. Izuku. Okay, Mom, I'll call you. Bye. When he said goodbye under the stairs where he now stood in the garbage dump, he took a breath and pressed the clock. Izuku. So I can transform into more than one creature, but how many more can I transform into? He then pressed the clock, only to reveal the silhouettes of the aliens. Pressing the button again changed her appearance. This time her skin began to turn a greenish-blue color, while her entire body crystallized. At the end of the transformation, a being covered in diamonds was revealed. Izuku. Wow, I really like this one. Looking at himself closely, I wonder what I can do. He raised his hand, and shards of glass shot out from his palm, embedding themselves in a refrigerator. The boy approached to see and was amazed by what he saw. Izuku. Incredible, so I can manipulate parts of my body, I wonder if. Then again his arm turned into a knife. Oh my god, thank you, universe. As I said that, I cut the refrigerator in half, leaving a clean cut. Time skip. Almost 6 months had passed since he found the watch. During that time, all he did was practice his abilities in all his forms on the beach or thoroughly investigate how the watch worked. The only thing he discovered was that if he pressed it, he would only be in one form for 10 minutes. Also, if he pressed it while in his alien form, he would change to another. This caught the attention of many people to the point that they considered his quirk a new stage of metamorphosis. For Izuku, this was perfect, as it would be his alibi. Now we find ourselves in the same place, but months have passed, and Midoriya is in the form of a humanoid tiger that he likes to call Wrath. Izuku R for Wrath, let me tell you something, you piece of trash they threw here. Grabbing what was a piece of a car, Wrath doesn't like trash in these places. Throwing the metal object as far as he could, to the point where it reached the bottom of the sea. Izuku R. Ha, take that trash. Nobody can beat Wrath because he's invincible. But the sound from the clock indicates that time is running out. Shit. While that was happening, a black limousine appeared on the street where the only people there were the driver and a girl who was in the back watching. There should be a beautiful beach here, not a garbage dump. However, instead of seeing a pile of scrap metal, he only found sand and the sea in plain sight. I looked around for the person responsible for this, until I saw a man with orange skin and black stripes, and if that wasn't enough, a green light appeared around the subject only to reveal a boy with green hair. Alfred, stop here please, said the girl. Alfred. Are you sure, Miss Momo? We're still a ways from your house. Momo. Okay, opening the limo door will be quick. Getting out of the vehicle and then going down the stairs. Hello, Izuku. Already packing his things to go to school, here's a voice behind him. Izuku. Una chica, hello. Momo. So you were the one who cleaned the whole beach. She asked with a smile that made the protagonist even more nervous. Izuku. Yes, this was to train my quirk's capabilities. Momo. How do you transform into a tiger? She asked curiously since she hadn't seen a transformation quirk. Izuku. Something like that. By the way, my name is Izuku Midoriya, and yours? Momo. My name is Momo Yaoyorozu. Hoping that he would recognize her because of her prestigious family. Izuku. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you Yaoyorozu, having a little more confidence. Momo. Don't you recognize the surname Yaoyorozu? My name doesn't ring a bell at all. Izuku. I would never forget the name of someone with a pretty face. This caused the dark-haired girl to blush. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Momo. No, don't worry. By the way, are you training to get into UA? Izuku. I'll try my best, will you go too? Momo. Heard the horn of his limousine. Excuse me, I have to go. Izuku. Don't worry, maybe I'll see you again. Momo. I'm sure. Before leaving, she gave him a kiss on the cheek, leaving the green-haired boy speechless. That's for cleaning the beach, goodbye. Izuku. You're welcome. Waving goodbye, she's very pretty. Now we find ourselves in a room full of boys and in one of the seats was Izuku Midoriya drawing one of his alien forms in his private notebook. Teacher. Okay, today you'll write a text, where you'll say what you'll do when you grow up. I'm holding some brochures for assignments, but I'm throwing them all at once. Who am I kidding? Everyone wants to be a hero, right? Everyone. Yes, exclaimed happily while showing off their quirks, except for Bakugo and Midoriya. Bakugo. Please, teacher. Speaking arrogantly, don't put me in the same bag as these extras. Student 1. Here we go again. Student. I bet my ass that Midoriya defeats him in seconds with the Homungosaur. That's right, everyone already knew about Midoriya's transformations, which made the freckled boy's popularity much higher than Bakugo's with his explosions. But even though they knew his forms, they didn't know the real reason behind them, only Bakugo knew. Professor. Okay, calm down, but Bakugo, are you planning on taking the UA entrance exam? This news left those present speechless, turning their anger into admiration. Bakugo. Exactly. I plan to be the only one in this school, so no one will surpass me. Teacher. But it also says here that Izuku Midoriya will take the entrance exam. Checking his papers, he rang the bell after a few seconds, indicating that classes were over. All the students who were there left the classroom, except for two of them, Izuku Midoriya and Katsuki Bakugo. After a few seconds, the ash-blonde boy pushed the freckled boy against the wall. Izuku. Kakachan. Please calm down, I don't want to fight. Having a fearful expression in his eyes. Bakugo. You think I care? While holding the green-haired boy by the throat with his right hand, he grabbed his wrist with the other to get a full view of the Omnitrix. This thing should be mine, not a useless Deku like you. Izuku. But Kachan, I told you, I can't take it off. It's somehow connected to me. When he said that, he could see the blonde's eyes turn white. He just took a deep breath and his face turned serious. Besides, thanks to this, I could be a great hero. I'd save people with a smile like All Might. You'd just use it for your own personal gain. Bakugo. At least I'm not a fucking useless idiot like you. With this thing I'd be number one and nobody would ever surpass me. Izuku. Kachan, I recommend that if you want to fight, you'll have to think twice. Wrath has the same temper as you, but he could beat you senseless. Bakugo. You know what? Keep that crap, releasing it and then pushing it to the ground, but you wouldn't amount to anything with this thing. Speaking about the Omnitrix and then leaving the place as if nothing had happened. Izuku, for his part, simply sighed wearily, packed his things, and started walking home. As he walked along the path, he crossed the tunnel, and while rolling up his sleeve to check his watch, he couldn't stop thinking about what Bakugo had said about him being nothing without the Omnitrix. Izuku. Maybe he's right, I'm nothing without him. His eyes suddenly became watery, showing signs that he was about to cry. However, their thoughts were interrupted by a mud-like mass that was surrounding them. Mud villain. Well, look at my new container. Separating its limbs so it can't try anything. Thank you very much, kid, you're my hero. Ha ha ha. Izuku. No, no, no. I can't reach the watch. Struggling to escape the villain's mass. Well, it seems Kachan was right. I'm useless. With each passing second, the mud villain covered Midoriya's body until nothing remained of him. His hopes were fading away. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Smash. A powerful gust of wind appeared, striking the villain directly. This caused him to shatter into many pieces and released a shocked Midoriya. At the other end of the tunnel stood the silhouette of a tall, muscular man. You don't have to have a boyfriend, you know why. Because I'm here. Revealing his silhouette as the #1 hero in all of Japan, All Might, the older man woke the freckled boy up with slaps, making him open his eyes. All Might. Young man, are you all right? You won't be dead yet, even after slapping him. Izuku. Huh, what happened to me? He stroked his head, but when he raised his head he noticed his biggest idol in front of his eyes. I can't believe it, All Might. Well, believe it, young man. Thanks for distracting him. I've been looking for him all day, and I'm sorry if my punch hurt you. Sometimes I can't gauge my strength, haha. Izuku. Okay. Grabbing his backpack to take out his diary, could you sign this for me, please? All Might. Of course. Grabbing the notebook and taking a pencil from his pocket, tell me, son, what's your name? Izuku. My name is Izuku Midoriya, but I couldn't help but stutter at this moment. All Might. Okay, that's it. You'd better go home. I'll take care of this guy. Izuku. Okay, thanks also for signing this. Walking aside while repeating the following phrase in his head. I met All Might. I met All Might. I met All Might. The freckled boy headed home again, and about 15 minutes had passed since the villain attacked him. Right now, he had a mix of emotions. On one hand, he was happy because he had met his lifelong idol. On the other, scared of how that villain had attacked him, and still distressed by Bakugo's words. Izuku. I don't know what I'd do without the watch. And once again his thoughts were interrupted not by another mud villain, but by an explosion that unleashed chaos in the city. Izuku. What's going on? He wondered, then saw a column of smoke. Maybe another villain is attacking. Wait a minute, if so, All Might will be there. I want to see that. With that enthusiasm, he returned to the city center, only to observe a crowd being held back by pro-heroes. But when he was near the perimeter, his eyes rolled back in his head as he saw, once again, the sludge villain now attempting to capture Bakugo. People were shouting and demanding to know why they weren't doing anything or why they weren't attacking. Meanwhile, a thin-looking man had a torn pocket. A girl of about 16 was also there, buying some things. Izuku. They can't get any closer, there's too much fire and they could hurt or even kill Kachan. Thinking this, his brain sent several signals through his body. I can't keep watching this, even though it's bothered me all these years, I have to help him. So, thinking of a plan, I look down at a manhole cover right below Bakugo and the sludge villain. Then I visualize an alley where there was also a cover, and finally I see the Omnitrix. Izuku. It's time to be a hero. 5 minutes later, we were still in the same situation, and there was no sign that things were going to improve. The heroes still couldn't get close enough, and they wouldn't be able to put out the fire either. All Might. This is unfortunate. I should have made sure to preserve it properly. Perhaps if I overuse one for all, I might. He couldn't finish his sentence because everyone present felt vibrations in the ground, to the point that the floor was cracking. This alerted the heroes, causing them to retreat for their own safety and that of the civilians. Villain. What's going on? Nervous and agitated, wondering what All Might was coming for. Finally, the ground cracked open, and a creature emerged from the depths. It had a yellow shell, stood about 2 meters tall, had animal-like ears on its head, and enormous arms with pistons built into its elbows. Bakugo. Still trying to escape with his explosions, he glanced sideways at the creature. It had a logo on its chest. Deku. Villain. Who the hell are you? Izuku didn't answer the question, he just lunged at him. First, he punched him in the eyes, stunning him for a few moments. Bakugo. Damn Deku, I can do it alone. Even when he was in danger, he put his ego above everything else. Izuku. A for Armadillo, you'll thank me later. With one hand he separated Bakugo from the viscous being while the other held the villain to exert force. In the end, he accomplished his mission, separating the ash-blonde boy. However, the heroes still couldn't do anything because of the fire. Izuku would have to face the monster alone. Villain. No, 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 no. I need a vessel, and you will be it. With his tentacles, he tried to merge, but it wouldn't have any effect. Izuku, my armor is flawless, impenetrable to any attack, even with your quirk. Villain. We're going to put him to the test. Thus they both resumed the attack. The villain attacked by surrounding Armadillo with his tentacles, then Izuku with immense strength separated the tentacles and punched him in the chest. Izuku, if I continue like this, I won't be able to do anything to him, and time is running out. Dodging the attacks while thinking of a plan, when I hit him in the eyes, he was stunned. What if his brain is still there? With everything planned, he moved into a distant position, the pistons in his elbows lengthened, and his fists went deeper into his arms. Villain. What are you? Attacking again with his tentacles. Izuku, he leapt over 1 meter wide, his arms behind his back. I am Armadillo. As he said that, he slammed his fists, propelled by the pistons, causing the villain to faint. All Might. Wow, just wow. He said from afar while still processing what was in his eyes. Calmy Wood. What do we do now? She asked, pointing at the yellow contraption. Backdraft. The law says that you only need a hero's license to perform heroic acts. I think we'll have to have a serious talk with him. Izuku Looking at the hole he created, he then looked up at the pro heroes. Well, I'll have to make the play of my life. When the fire and smoke dissipated, Midoriya entered that hole again. The heroes did too, however, upon entering the sewers they could not locate him. Calmy Wood. It's not here. How can something so big escape like that? What he didn't realize was that in the corner of the sewer was a small creature, barely a few centimeters tall, with gray skin and bulging eyes. Izuku Gray matter I've been saved from that, now I'll have to wait until everything has calmed down. Time skip. After that battle between the living mass and Armadillo, there was quite a commotion, as some of the onlookers recorded the fight, and it was now among the most viewed videos of the day on YouTube. But let's not focus on that. Our protagonist was just a few meters from his home, but fate would not be merciful to him. Bakugo. Deku, running until he is in front of the freckled boy. Izuku. Kachan, what now? You already know, don't you think I deserve a thank you? Bakugo. As if I did. I could have beaten him and taken the credit. Not like you, Deku. Izuku. I just sighed, even though I knew this would happen. At least you could keep this a secret. Pointing at the clock, Bakugo. I'm not promising anything, but I'm not a gossip. Leaving the freckled boy alone, he continues on his way. Izuku. Well, I guess. Momo. Hello Midoriya, waving to the boy behind her. Izuku. Yaoyorozu. What are you doing here? Momo. Well, I just wanted to give this to you, Armadillo. Said in a mocking tone, holding her backpack that she had forgotten. Izuku. What are you talking about? I wouldn't do something like that. Momo. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone, and if you're wondering how, well. Flashback. In the chaos of the street was the girl, looking at the ash-haired boy, however she crossed eyes with the freckled boy she had met before. Momo. Midoriya. Watching him, what could he be doing? Then he proceeded to pursue him, thanks to the commotion of this event. Izuku wouldn't turn back. When he reached the alley, he went straight into the sewer. Following that, Momo was able to observe from the manhole cover as he transformed into Armadillo. Momo. Wow, that's amazing. Watching it disappear into the darkness. End of flashback. Momo. I saw you fight that villain, but you didn't go back for your backpack when they were looking for you. Izuku. Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that. Scratching the back of his neck in embarrassment, and by the way, thank you very much for this. Checking if he was missing anything. Momo. Hey, what do you think about us getting in touch so we can get to know each other better? May I? Asking permission to use her cell phone. Izuku. Sure, why not? And does this make us friends? Momo. Of course, now we're friends. Several months have passed since what happened with the clay villain, however people were still wondering where that hero named himself Armadillo was. Nobody knew anything about that individual. But the only ones who knew his identity were Bakugo, who recognized him thanks to the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, Momo because she saw him transform, and lastly his mother because she also knew that form. In the end she punished him by making him clean the entire apartment for a week for taking the risk. Months later, as I was saying, a couple of months passed and Izuku was able to establish a friendship with the girl Yaoyorozu. In the end, they had more things in common than he had with Bakugo. For example, they both loved reading, analyzing the various quirks and heroes, etc., etc. Now we find ourselves in Musafatu City Square. There, Izuku and Momo were sitting on the swings, as they had planned to meet in this specific place every time they left school. Izuku. So Yaoyorozu, are you excited for tomorrow? He asked with a stutter. Even though she was his friend, he couldn't help being nervous around a girl. Yaoyorozu. Unfortunately not. I was recommended for admission to UA Academy. Her face began to show a sad expression, and she gave a nod, confirming her feelings. I've been practicing my quirk for months to go with you. You know, when I decided to become a hero, I wanted to do it because of my own effort, not because of my family name. Izuku. Don't say that, they just want to help you. Besides, if you're getting in through a recommendation, it's because they know you're qualified to be a hero. Momo. Do you really think so? Changing her expression from sad to happy, and the freckled boy just nodded. Thank you, you always cheer me up, and you're my first real friend. Izuku. Thanks, and you didn't say you had another one, what was its name? Scratching his chin to remember the name. Momo. Todoroki. It's been a long time since we talked, and he's very serious. But on the other hand, you're the opposite. You're kind, sweet, and you always cheer me up. Izuku. You're welcome. Sorry too, to think that such a pretty girl would be with someone like me. When he said that, it made the girl blush. And I'm sorry. Momo. No, it's not okay. Getting up from the swing while quickly moving her hands denying what YYA said, I have to go, send me a message when you get home. Izuku. Okay, goodbye. He waved as the black-haired girl headed to her limousine. Momo. When she got to the vehicle, the first thing she did was clutch her chest as her blush deepened. Why does this always happen to me? The next day, Izuku was currently walking on the sidewalk, heading towards UA Academy, where the entrance exam was being held. As always, the freckled boy felt anxious because if he failed the exams, he wouldn't be able to pursue his dream of becoming a hero. Izuku. When he reached the entrance, he let out a long sigh to calm his inner nerves. Okay, here we go. To calm down and have some luck, he stepped with his right foot to enter UA because he said it brought good fortune. However, it didn't work out that way. A gray-haired boy standing behind him wasn't too happy about Deku being there. Bakugo. Deku, what the hell are you doing here? Taking quick steps to be just centimeters away from him. Izuku. I already told you, Kachan, I'm going to do the test whether you like it or not. This time, in a more serious voice, he challenged Bakugo. Bakugo. GCH, whatever, you better not get in my way. Grabbing his right arm and then pushing him out of his sight. Thanks to Katsuki's actions, the green-haired boy collided with another subject, to be more specific a purple-haired girl, and the most striking thing is that she had two cable-like protrusions on her ears. Ouch, what's wrong with you? Complained the anonymous girl. Izuku. Sorry, it's just that my friend got annoyed and pushed me. Pointing at the ash-haired boy as he entered the academy gates. I see, are you sure he's your friend? You should put him in his place. Looking at his wristwatch, then noticing the Omnitrix, by the way, nice watch, where did you buy it? Izuku. Oh, this is a, thinking of a quick answer until he had a moment. It's a protrusion of my quirk, they're like your, he couldn't continue because he thought he was going to offend her. My jacks, right, he would just nod his head, making the girl laugh. You're not good with girls, are you? Izuku. To tell you the truth, the already established nerves caused him to blush and also scratch the back of his neck. Hee, relax, you know you're better than my idiot classmates. Izuku. Thanks, I think so. Well, you can tell me about your quirk later. For now, we have to go. And my name is LeonardoGeron too. Izuku. You're right, and by the way, my name is Izuku Midoriya. When they said that, they ran off to arrive on time. However, they had to split up when it was time for the written exam. After that, all the applicants gathered in one room to have the details explained, and the person in charge of that was the hero Present Mike. Present Mike. Hello aspiring heroes, say YEI if you're excited. But he received no response, only the crickets, which summed up, okay, difficult audience, let's get started. While explaining what it was going to be about, Midoriya was thinking about which alien would be useful for this occasion. Izuku. Well, Wrath isn't an option because he's quite compulsive and could get me into trouble. Mummy, Cold, and Gray Matter are the weakest in brute strength. To think more calmly, he laid his head back on the table and hid it with his arms. I also can't use Armadillo since they might recognize me. The ideal ones would be Diamond, Fire, Lichen, Water Hazard, and Homungosaur. However, thanks to his thoughts, one of the applicants said the following. Excuse me, Iida, and I wanted to say that you're mistaken because you only mentioned 3 types of robots, and the brochures list 4. After that, his gaze fixed on the freckled boy. And you, don't pay attention to what he said. If you're not going to take it seriously, you'd better leave. Izuku. Hey, but I was paying attention. I was just making a plan for the test while I was listening, besides, you're bothering me. He replied in an annoyed tone. Present Mike. Okay, don't fight. Besides, it's true, the last one is called 00 points, it's not worth fighting them anyway. Time skip. After Present Mike's explanation, they went to a section of the UA facilities called Sector Beta, which was a fake city. Izuku. Wow, how did they manage to build a fake city? Admiring the place from the steel gate to the buildings that jutted out from the walls, when he turned his head he could see the purple-haired girl in the distance. Juro. However, as he was getting closer, the alarm sounded everywhere, alarming most people, including Izuku. Present. Alright guys, there are 10 seconds left until the doors open, and remember, in the life of a hero, you have to run, not walk. Izuku. Damn, oh well, maybe next time. Saying that, he stepped to the front of the crowd and activated his watch to prepare. As soon as the pro hero said, now, everyone rushed out, including Izuku, who had a slight head start and was now a little behind. Izuku. We're heating things up. He then pressed the Omnitrix and in a green glow transformed into his first alien, Fire. Izuku F. Okay, I need to get at least 40 points. Running as fast as he could through the streets of the fake city. Bingo. In front of him was a 1-point robot, which approached him quickly. When it was close enough, he jumped to grab it by the head. Upon contact with his hands, the metal began to melt, glowing red hot, to the point of ceasing to function. Izuku F. Okay, 39 is missing. He turned his head to see another 2-pointer and with a quick movement launched a fireball through the mechanical being. Correction 37. Minutes had passed since then, and he had already encountered some robots, however it was not enough to be approved until a group surrounded him from back to front. Izuku F. Relax, I've practiced enough with this guy, you know what you have to do. Taking a breath to relax, the flames all over his body grew larger and brighter. Hot shot. With both hands forward, he launched a burst of flame against all the robots, destroying them instantly. Monitoring room. All the boys who wanted to enter the academy were watched over by the heroes who had the occupation of teacher, including the one in charge of the academy itself. Smentos. It seems there are more applicants this year, he said with a cheerful tone. Aizawa. Yes, but that means there will be more failing grades. He said it in a realistic way. We can only have 40 students per year. Midnight. But even so, they gave it their all. I glanced at the screen to see Izuku. And there's your example, what do you say Nezu? But he didn't answer, he was just looking strangely at the fire boy. Nezu. He had a lost look in his eyes, and this was proven when he knocked over his teacup for not keeping his balance. What's a Pyronite doing here on Earth? He wondered to himself, only to notice more closely that it had a symbol resembling an hourglass. Wait, could it be? Edgeshot. Nezu, raising his voice to snap him out of his daze. Nezu. Sorry. Coming back to his senses, well, I think it's time for the final test. Saying that, he pressed a large red button. Return. Izuku F. Well, I've been in this form for quite a while now. I think it'll take about 2 minutes to return to my normal form. Then the ground began to tremble, accompanied by loud shouts of, "Run!" or, "The hill is dotted." This robot was different and far superior to the rest due to its monstrous size, comparable to buildings. Izuku F. God, in this form I won't be able to defeat him, and besides, I don't have much time left. However, just as he was about to leave, he heard a scream located near the 0 point. "Juro! Help! I was trapped in a pile of rubble caused by that giant robot. Please, here it comes." Izuku F. Nobody's going to help her. Watching as everyone ignored her or turned a deaf ear. Cowards, I'll have to go myself, but not like this. He then pressed the Omnitrix on his chest, causing a green flash to appear in his body, which had been surrounded by hot embers, to be replaced by bluish-green crystals. This form was his third alien, called Diamond Head. Thanks to this, the Omnitrix's timeline was reset. Izuku D. Much better. With a swift movement, he buried his right fist, creating mounds of crystal around the purple-haired girl. Juro! Who is that? She turned her gaze as two pillars made of crystal lifted the concrete slabs that held her prisoner, and when she had a small space she escaped running in the direction of Diamond. Thank you, Izuku D. It's me, Midoriya, replied the crystal alien. Juro! Huh, Midoriya trying to process how a shy boy who could barely talk to her could have turned into a diamond humanoid. Izuku D. You better leave, now he said it with such a different voice, as if all his insecurities had changed along with his appearance. Juro! Okay, but please don't hurt yourself. The girl said, receiving a nod of, yes, and, now sure of herself, ran off, leaving Izuku alone with the freckled boy. The mechanical being lashed out with a powerful blow, crashing violently into the ground, causing several tremors and an impressive cloud of dust. Izuku barely managed to dodge it, but he took advantage of this and climbed onto its arm. Once close enough, he leapt high into the air and then raised his fists to fire a projectile, which struck the mechanical being directly, destroying it instantly. Just as he was defeated, the alarm sounded, indicating that the test was over. Izuku D. Phew, I hope I've accumulated a lot of points. The Omnitrix started beeping, indicating that time was up. Izuku. It's over already, so soon. He wondered to himself, since this had never happened to him before. Present. All right, time's up. Those who are injured, please go to the infirmary. And by the way, the test results will be given to you next week. He said this through the loudspeaker in the room. Time skip. As the hours passed, Ua Academy showed no signs of life except for one individual who had become curious about Izuku Midoriya, Nezu. He was now in his office reviewing the recording of how he confronted all the robots, including the 0-pointer. Nezu. No one can transform into a Pyronite, nor into a Predosipian just like that. Trying to analyze the situation, he leaned back in his chair and tilted his head upwards. Nezu. Could it be a root hybrid? He wondered to himself until he remembered the way he transformed. He had something on his wrist, could it be? In his previous job, he had heard rumors about a device that could turn you into any alien. Nezu. His eyes widened in shock as he realized, the Omnitrix. I thought it was just a myth, but I just saw it with my own eyes. Almost a week had passed since the events of the trial, everything had calmed down since then, including the rumors and theories about the new hero called Armadillo, which had stopped because it was already old news. On the other hand, Izuku struck up a new friendship with Juro, however, they can't communicate because they don't have each other's numbers. Now we find ourselves in the Midoriya apartment, specifically in the freckled boy's room. It had an unusual decoration and wasn't the usual merchandise of the #1 hero, but rather posters or drawings of his aliens. Izuku. The boy was sitting at the table next to his desk and drawing one of his aliens in his diary. Okay, almost there. He was doing it in his journal. Before it was used to collect information on pro heroes, now it serves as a guide to use all his aliens correctly, but he still didn't know all of their abilities. Izuku. I think that's it. He sighed and leaned back on the wooden surface of his desk. I wish I could know where you came from and how you were created. He looked at the clock, examining it in detail. Inko. Son, letters have arrived. Could you check if there's anything important? The mother shouted from the kitchen, watching as some envelopes were slipped through the keyhole. Izuku. Yes, Mom, I'm coming. He responded with another shout. Well, those questions will have to wait for another day. Saying that, he gets up and proceeds to leave his room. When he collected the mail, there were only this month's house bills and several flyers or magazines. But the last one was different because it had extra weight, as if it weren't just a few pages thick. He looked at it closely until he could see the UA Academy logo, and this made the freckled boy's eyes widen in surprise. Izuku. No way, Mom, the exam results are in. He shouted with all the excitement he had. Inko. Seriously, and what does she say? She said from the kitchen. Izuku. I don't know yet, I'll go check in my room. About 5 minutes had passed since the letter arrived. Now, back in his room, he tore open the envelope and saw that there was no letter but a gray metal disc. Izuku. What could this be? He turned the disc with his hand and at the bottom was a button, which he immediately pressed. When pressed, a light flashed, startling the freckled boy, who reacted by throwing it to the ground. Finally, the disc projected a picture showing the director of the UA. Nezu. Good afternoon or evening, whatever. I'm Nezu, the person in charge of UA Academy, and I wanted to let you know that you have a score of 100 points. He said normally while holding a teacup in his right hand. Izuku. When he said he had 100 points, his brain collapsed and he couldn't put together a coherent response. But I counted 40 points, or did I not look closely? Nezu. I know you're wondering how you got so many points. Well, it's actually simple. By defeating the robot in your crystal form you obtained 60 rescue points, showing a recording of how you freed Jiro from the rubble and also the destruction of the 0 points. Izuku. Well then that explains the 60 points. Now I understand the situation. Nezu. Even young Jiro offered to give you a small percentage of her points, but we declined. Looking at someone off screen, he said, get to the point, okay. To wrap this up, since you have the second highest score. Izuku. Second. He wondered because he thought he came in first place, but that didn't discourage him at all. Nezu. You've been assigned to Class 1A and you start on Monday, that's all. Have a nice day. When he said that, the hologram automatically turned off, leaving a pleased and shocked Midoriya. Time skip. The next day, Izuku, already dressed, was at the UA facilities. To be more specific, he was in the hallways looking for his respective classroom. Izuku. Let's see, 1A, 1A. Repeating his classroom over and over again while looking for it, but it wasn't long before he found a sign saying his group number. I guess that's it. Wow, this door is very big. Looking at the entrance to his classroom, it was more than twice his size. Jiro. It's obvious they have money here. Appearing behind the green-haired boy. Izuku. Jiro. Taken by surprise, but still happy. What are you doing here? Jiro. Well, time to study, and I suppose we'll be in the same class. She said it in a more cheerful tone, something she found odd, but good at the same time. Okay, let's go. He then pushes open the door to show his new classmates, some of whom were talking amongst themselves, others checking their cell phones, and still others silently waiting for the teacher to arrive. Jiro. They seem good, but faster than ever. I look at the ash-blonde boy. I spoke too fast. What do you think, Midoriya? I ask my new friend. Iida. I'll say it again, don't put your feet on the table, it's disrespectful. The blue-haired boy reprimanded his partner, Bakugo, for doing that. Bakugo. Stop bothering me, 4 eyes. Who do you think you are? He responded with his characteristic angry shout. Iida. My name is Iida Tenya. He said it without noticing his partner's insult. Bakugo. Whatever, I'll crush you anyway. Hearing the door open, he turned his head only to see a girl with jacks in her ears and the freckled boy Deku hated so much. Iida. Huh. When he said the nickname, he could see the boy who had challenged him earlier. Izuku. Hello Kachan. When I shouted it again, he got nervous. As everyone was about to introduce themselves to each other, they noticed a yellow bag moving across the living room floor. Stop talking or I'll have to take you out, said the bag, only to reveal a man with long hair and dark circles under his eyes that meant tiredness. Iida. You can't be here, only students can be here. he said, thinking that he was a vagrant because of his appearance. You're right, but the teacher has to be here too. Saying that, he lowered the zipper of his sleeping bag, then stood up. My name is Shota Aizawa and I will be your teacher until you graduate. When he said that, everyone present, even those who had just arrived, went to their seats. Iida. The first thing he did was bow. I'm very sorry. He was afraid of bowing so much for his first time with his teacher. Aizawa. Okay, just don't repeat that again. In the meantime, I want you all to go put on your PE uniforms and head to the training yard. 1A. Hi, shouted all the aspiring hero boys. As Izuku was about to leave, he felt a hand on his shoulder. When he turned around, he saw his friend Momo Yaoyorozu, who for some reason had a frown on her face. Izuku. Oh, hi Yaoyorozu, sorry for not seeing you, it's just that. Momo. Why did you ignore me? She asked, with a hint of anger in her voice. And he replied, because you came with another girl. Have you already replaced me? This time, his voice was melancholic. Izuku. No. Altering his voice to sound serious, I only met her during the entrance exam and I rescued her from a giant robot. Momo. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. That was a relief. For a moment I thought. She couldn't finish the sentence because Professor Aizawa was on Midoriya's back. Aizawa. You'd better go, or I'll have to punish you. He told his students in an angry tone. Izuku. Momo. Hey. Time skip. Everyone was already dressed for the occasion. They were outside the facilities, in the courtyard, where their teacher was holding some papers. Uraraka. Oh, I thought we'd have some kind of welcome on the first day. The brown-haired girl spoke with a tone of disappointment as the day passed like this. Aizawa. Unfortunately, I can't adjust my voice so everyone can hear, since we only have 3 years to train you all to be heroes. There won't be time. Now, let's get down to business. You'll be undergoing several physical diagnostic tests. This will help us determine who needs assistance and who doesn't, and in that case, you can use your quirks as you see fit. 1A. Yes, they shouted in unison with great excitement. Kaminari. This will be exciting. Mina. It'll be fun to finally use my quirk. Aizawa. Exciting, fun. He sighed wearily, just staring at him. And if we make it even more exciting, it seems. The last one on the leaderboard will be expelled. 1A. Huh, Izuku. But we can't do that, it's only the first day. He said quietly so as not to make things worse. Momo. You're right, especially since he himself said it's a diagnosis. I remembered everything he said until an idea struck him. He must be lying to give us good motivation. Izuku. Let's hope so. He sighed to calm his tense body just to listen to his teacher. Aizawa. Okay, the first thing we'll do is a duo race. While saying that, he pointed with his index finger to the track, and at the end there was a machine to measure the results. Aizawa. The first to participate will be. Seeing the first 2 names that appeared, Iida Tenya and Midoriya Izuku. Izuku. Iida. Yes. They nodded to go to the start of the track. Izuku. As he walked, he carefully considered which alien would be the right one for this situation. I think the fastest would be Lycan, I have no other choice. Then he slid the Omnitrix's nut to reveal the black silhouette of said alien. Aizawa. Are you ready? Looking at both boys because Midoriya was not in position. Izuku. Just a moment. He crushed the Omnitrix with his left palm. Suddenly, Midoriya's muscles began to grow, while gray and black fur enveloped his entire body. Finally, his teeth increased in size and became sharp. As the transformation ended, the green light disappeared, revealing Izuku transformed into a werewolf. Thanks to his uniform, he adapted to his new alien form. Izuku L. Now I'm ready, Professor. He replied with more confidence, only to then position himself next to Iida. Everyone who witnessed what the freckled boy did was shocked or trembling nervously upon seeing the creature, even Aizawa, but only for a moment. Aizawa. Now then, Iida. Izuku. L. Yes. Both of them shouted from the start of the track. Iida was in the typical position to start running, and on the other hand, Izuku was only on all fours pretending to be a dog. Aizawa. Ya. When they heard the call, they both took off running down the track. Izuku, thanks to his Lycan form, had the physical advantage, which allowed him to quickly overtake his opponent by a few centimeters. Seeing how close he was, Iida activated the engines built into the back of his thighs, giving the blue-haired boy the lead. A short distance from the finish line, Izuku made a desperate move, using his hind legs to propel himself out of the ground, passing his opponent, and finally reaching the finish line. Aizawa. Very good. With a stopwatch in hand, Midoriya has a 2-second advantage. Well done, Izuku L. Thank you, Professor. Have a good race. Looking as the blue-haired boy approaches. Iida. Yes, and I'm sorry for how I treated you the first time we met. He said with a tone of shame and regret. Izuku L. Don't worry, you just wanted to give your opinion even if it was wrong. Iida. I see. By the way, aren't you going to deactivate your quirk? I asked because even after the race ended, it still retained its form. Izuku L. Oh well. It just takes time to return to my human form. Trying to sound calm, but inside he was nervous about sounding suspicious. Iida. I understand, I'm sorry if I doubted you. So time passed, and Izuku would sometimes conduct tests with or without his alien forms because he needed to recharge the Omnitrix's energy. While everyone was doing everything their teacher said, someone was watching them from afar without making a sound. Aizawa. Alright, next up for the strength test is Midoriya. Let's see if you can beat Sato. He said it jokingly, since he lifted almost a ton. Izuku. I think I can. Homungosaurus can handle this, but in his excitement to show off his best transformation, he didn't pay attention to which one he chose, causing him to pick the wrong one. Too late, a metal armor with a yellow color began to adhere to the boy's body, first his torso, then his arms, and finally his head, which resembled a helmet of the warriors of ancient Rome. Izuku A. No, what do I do now? They'll recognize me and expel me on my first day. He thought to himself while panicking, but when he looked at his classmates they just stared at him in amazement, which calmed him down a little. Aizawa. Are you going to stand still or lift the metal beams? He asked, a little annoyed because he was taking so long. Izuku A. Yes, sorry. Now calm. With his giant arms he lifted the beams as if it were nothing. Aizawa. Well, do you think you can lift more or is it at its limit? He asked to be sure if he could continue. Izuku A. I'm fine, add more weight if you want. While Aizawa was studying the physical limits of the armadillo form, his classmates were talking. Kirishima. Damn, Midoriya looks way more manly in that form than in the wolf form. He said enthusiastically. Kaminari. That's right, is it just me, or did you see him somewhere? Recalling the memories in his brain that he had read on the news about a guy with the same characteristics as him standing in front of him. Nah, it can't be anything. Momo. It seems like even the teacher didn't realize he saved Bakugo. Juro. She stood frozen in place because she had read about a hero who saved a high school boy and said he was a big guy with yellow armor and pistons in his elbows. It's him. I guess I'm not surprised after all, he did the same thing for me during the exam. Aizawa. Very well, I think you've already passed Sato, you can put him down. He watched as Izuku carried 4 tons of steel on his back. Izuku A. Thanks. He stuttered because he was putting a lot of effort into his arms and back to support the weight. So they proceeded. However, Uraraka took first place for carrying the maximum weight thanks to her gravity-manipulating quirk. But moving on, hours passed just to reach the final test. Aizawa. Okay, everyone did well. Now, the last activity will be about throwing this ball. Showing one he was holding, the first to do it will be Bakugo. Here, you were the one who got first place in the exam, now you'll be the first to throw the ball. The aforementioned Bakugo caught it. Those who listened to the dark-haired man were stunned because, Bakugo. What do I do now? Using his typical tone of voice towards anyone. Aizawa. Just stand there pointing to a small circle on the ground and throw the ball as far as you can with your quirk, got it? Bakugo. Whatever. Then with his right hand he began to produce nitroglycerin and with his right hand he threw the ball. While it was in the air, Bakugo directed an explosion accompanied by a shine, that the ash-haired boy said. In the end, this caused the ball to fly off at maximum speed. Izuku. Shine. Juro. Heavens, is it always like this? I asked the freckled boy who was right next to me. Izuku. Yeah, but you get used to it. A drop of sweat forms on the back of his neck due to his friend's attitude. Aizawa. He was just paying attention as the ball slowly fell until it hit the ground 160 meters away, looking at a meter he had on his cell phone. Everyone. Wow. Impressed by the power of how the ball came out. Aizawa. Midoriya, you came in second place, so now you'll be next. Kirishima. Man, we're powerful in this group. The redhead shouted excitedly. Bakugo. TCK, damn Deku, that device belongs to me. Still resentful because the freckled boy kept it and not him. Izuku. Yes, Professor Aizawa, just give me a moment. He said, going through the same process to choose, but this one will be different. Aizawa. Raising an eyebrow at his student's actions. Are you ready? Izuku. Now, pressing his watch again. The green light emitted by the Omnitrix signaled the start of the transformation. First, his skin turned a dull red, then it hardened like a crustacean shell. This revealed a figure about 1.85 meters tall wearing said shell, with 4 sharp green eyes and a smooth hood the same color as his body. Barnacles were embedded all over his body. Suyu. What do you call that, Midoriya? Asked the frog girl, referring to her classmate's unusual appearance. Izuku A.M. I call this one aquatic menace. He said it, but thanks to this form he didn't need to move his mouth to speak. Mr. Aizawa, I have to launch it, right? Aizawa. If you pass the ball and the crustacean man catches it, what was your throwing record? Izuku A.M. 50 meters already inside the circle. He threw the ball and with a quick movement brought both palms together towards the sky showing 2 holes, then pressurized water jets came out in the direction of the ball. Izuku A.M. Just a little more, the crustacean thought to himself. After about 5 seconds, he stopped shooting water, only to watch the ball fall far away. Aizawa. 157 meters. Momo. Well done, Midoriya. Time skip. As I was saying, time had passed, and this was evident in the sky, which had turned orange. All the boys were sweaty and tired, suggesting they had only trained on the first day, and Aizawa simply showed the top list. Top 1. Izuku Midoriya. Top 2. Katsuki Bakugo. Top 3. Shoto Todoroki. Top 4. Iida Tenya. Top 20. Minoru Mineta. Even though Mineta found himself in last place, Aizawa said it was just a joke, saying it was only to motivate him. Nezu Office. The rodent was thoughtful ever since he saw the Omnitrix for the second time. He still couldn't believe it because in his old job there were only rumors about a device that could change his current form. Nezu. During the exam, he transformed into a Pyronite and a Pretosapian. Now he's a Lobano, a Talpedon, and also an Orician. When the time comes, I'll have to ask him how he did it. The next day, we see class back in session. Each student was going about their business, some standing, others sitting in their seats. Izuku Midoriya was sketching the appearances and forms of his aliens in his notebook. He always did this when he was inspired or had nothing better to do. He was peaceful until he felt a soft hand touch his left shoulder. He turned and saw his black-haired friend, Momo Yaoyorozu. She gave him a kind smile, and the freckled boy returned the gesture. Momo. Hi Midoriya, what are you doing? She says, looking at the notebook of the boy with green hair. Izuku. I was drawing to pass the time. He said this in an embarrassed way because he could be in as a hero geek. Momo. I see. Saying that, she moved closer to examine his drawing more closely, but she raised an eyebrow and her expression turned doubtful because she didn't know this individual. I don't know that hero. In fact, I don't know anyone who looks like a mummy. Then she moved so close that she touched Midoriya's cheek. Izuku. Yaoyorozu, you, he stuttered as he felt his heart race at the touch of his friend's soft skin. Momo. Huh, she turned her eyes to the left only to realize that she was too close to him. Sorry, she said, backing away a few centimeters as a blush spread across her face. Izuku. No problem. He said this just to avoid saying anything for 3 seconds, so as not to make the situation awkward for both of them. He then said the following. And by the way, this guy is my 7th transformation. Momo. Seriously, and how many are there now? I ask because so far I only knew 5 of them. I had seen some of them in action, but I only mentioned the rest in some anecdote. Izuku. Yes, I simply call it mummy, it's my 7th transformation. While they were talking about their things, the purple-haired girl, Jiro Kyoka, listened from her desk, which was 3 seats away from Midoriya. She could hear everything thanks to her earpieces on the floor, and she focused on listening to their conversation. At first, it was mere curiosity, but the way they were looking at each other bothered her for some reason, like she had a knot in her stomach. But she couldn't dwell on that situation any longer because she heard someone approaching the classroom door. Thinking it was Aizawa, she lifted her protrusions from the floor. However, suddenly, the number 1 hero, All Might, entered in a comical manner and said the following. All Might. I'm coming in like a normal person, he said with a cheerful expression, striking an extravagant pose. The sight of the peace symbol caused a mixture of emotions among all those present. Most showed emotions, causing murmurs or celebrating that they would have him as a teacher. Others kept their faces serious, but it still took him by surprise and very few really didn't care. Izuku. No way, it's our teacher, it's All Might. If he hadn't had enough, now his greatest idol was right in front of him. Well, the second time, but it was just as spectacular. I wonder how he'll teach his classes. Will it be like Aizawa's? Momo. He looks adorable when he gets nervous. I mention this in a low voice, but I realize what I just said and my only option is to cover my mouth. What am I thinking? All Might. Good day, young ladies. You may already know me, but just in case, I'm All Might, and I'll be your instructor for battle training. He said, raising his voice cheerfully. Now, what I want you to do is go to the locker rooms. First, he took a button from his pocket, and when he pressed it, suitcases with the students' names on them appeared in the compartments on the wall next to the floor. Take your costumes, and then head to Training Ground Gamma 1A. Yes sir. They said it loudly at the same time, as if it were an army. Time skip. Now all the students of Class A were in the simulated city, also known as Gamma Territory, formerly used for the entrance exam, which would now be their battleground. The aforementioned students already had their respective costumes. Some were designed to aid or enhance their quirks, others were purely for style. Like Izuku, his attire was purely aesthetic, as all he needed was his watch. His suit consisted of a white mesh that dominated the upper part of his torso, while the lower part, including the sides, was predominantly black. His pants matched the aforementioned color, and he wore boots. He wore a mask that covered almost everything except his messy hair, which peeked out. Jiro. Thanks to being right there while everyone else was admiring their new outfits. Well, she only kind of did them the way she asked for them. Then he looked up at Midoriya, slowly approached him, and said, your suit looks good on you, but I should cut your hair. Izuku. Thanks Jiro, but I never do anything to my hair, he said, scratching the bottom of his mask. A few seconds later, he felt his hair being moved by a cold hand and looked down to see it was Kyoka. What are you doing, Jiro? Fixing your hair, it's a total mess. Trying to tuck in all the hair that was sticking out of the mask and trying to put it in or fix it. The point of having a suit is that you look good, but your hair makes it difficult, she said in a funny way, not wanting to hurt his feelings. Izuku. That's cruel, Jiro. He said, trying to say it in a nice way, but the way she rubbed her hands on her mask and curled her hair made it difficult. But I like my hair just the way it is. Jiro. Well, whatever you say in a funny and relaxing tone. But if I'm honest, black and white is your color, she mentioned, looking at her suit in detail. Izuku. Thank you, and to be honest, yours looks great on you too. It makes you look cuter and tougher at the same time, he says in a different tone, and thanks to his mask, the tone is a little different, as if he were speaking from a mouthpiece. Jiro. When I mentioned that she looked cute, she lowered her gaze to hide her blush. Before, no one called her that because she hadn't developed yet, and her personality didn't help much. Baka, she said quietly. All Might. All right, young ones. He appeared before them, holding some papers that would help him explain today's assignment. Okay, I've gathered you all here for a special training exercise. This exercise will be divided into 2 teams. The first team will be the heroes, whose objective is to stop the detonation of a bomb hidden by the villains. The villains' objective is to defend and hide the device for a certain amount of time. I'm going to choose the teams randomly for this. 1A. Yes sir. They said in unison. All Might. All right, team of heroes. He said, taking 2 slips of paper from a drawer and announcing the chosen ones, Iida Tenya and Bakugo Katsuki. Iida. It's good not to be a villain, said the blue-haired man in silver armor. Bakugo. Just don't get in my way. All Might. Villains. As he says this, he dips his hand into the box filled with fighting gear bearing the names of his students, Momo Yaoyorozu and Izuku Midoriya. Izuku, Momo. Yes. They exclaimed happily upon being chosen as teammates. In the end, all the teams, both heroes and villains, were randomly formed by All Might as in the original anime. However, Uraraka Ochako was paired with Mineta this time. Time skip. 5 minutes passed and the first to enter were the first team of villains, Izuku Midoriya and Momo Yaoyorozu. They had just placed the fake bomb on the top floor of an abandoned building. Izuku. Is this for real? I asked, but feeling the soft texture, I realize it's made of paper. Oh, it would be weird to have a real bomb. Momo. Yes, but speaking of bombs, would you help me with this? She said, speaking from behind her because she wanted privacy to use her quirk without any discomfort. Izuku. Yes. Upon seeing what his friend did, he just turned towards the wall, and a few seconds later he sighed to try to calm down. Momo. She would notice how her friend was behaving, then give a small smile and finish creating her gadgets. Relax, if you were someone I didn't know, I'd be in another room doing this. Izuku. Oh, okay. The freckled boy spoke in a calmer tone, considering he'd known her for months and was starting to trust them both. Well, I see you're finished, he said, approaching the girl and grabbing the landmines. Will this kill them or? Momo. No, but they're designed to stun, and if he comes here, we'll notice. The girl spoke as she carefully placed the mine on either side of the door where the bomb was located. However, she couldn't help but remember seeing Izuku talking to Jiro. For some reason, it bothered her quite a bit. By the way, Izuku, what do you think of my outfit? Izuku. His brain couldn't utter any words or sentences, just seeing his outfit that exposed quite a bit of his body made him blush. Well, it seems. All Might. Attention villains. The heroes have entered the building. You have 15 minutes, the symbol of peace said from a megaphone in the monitoring room. Izuku. Thank God, he thought to himself, because it would be quite awkward for him to answer Yaoyorozu's question. We don't have time, we have to patrol this floor and report any activity, he said, knowing that Bakugo would go after him, so by process of elimination, he would have to go up against Iida. I'll go to the right, and you go to the left. Momo. Okay, good luck, she said, inspecting the left corridor, and they slowly moved away from each other. About 10 minutes had passed since they had to take the stairs and the bomb was on the top floor. It took longer than expected. However, this was also thanks to Yaoyorozu setting several traps on every floor. Izuku, meanwhile, was on the same floor inspecting the left-hand corridors. A deep darkness was enveloping the hallways. If they kept up this pace, they might win without a fight. Izuku. As he walked, he pressed a gray button on the side of his mask with his right hand. Yaoyorozu, were you able to find anything? Momo. Not for now, everything seems calm, she said from the other side of the floor. With her communicator turned on she began to talk to him. We could win if we keep this up. Izuku. Yes. As he said that, a huge explosion was heard and caused Izuku to be pushed against a wall. A few seconds later, when he recovered, he looked up and it was none other than Bakugo. He had his typical hateful look towards the freckled boy and his face only reflected anger towards him. Bakugo. Well, what happened Deku? Didn't you see it coming? He said to provoke him and created more nitroglycerin from his palms. Izuku. It's something that won't happen again. He then quickly touches the panel of his watch and presses it roughly. But because he felt cornered and also had to watch Bakugo to anticipate his attacks, he didn't pay attention to which alien he had chosen. Too late, a bright green light emerged from the Omnitrix as it was activated. The metamorphosis had begun. His joints stretched, and piles of yellowish bandages began to wrap around the freckled boy's body until the clock's flashing stopped. Now Izuku had the appearance of a mummy, with limbs as elongated and thin as his torso. His Omnitrix was on his right shoulder, and he wore black bracelets with gold details on both sides of his forearms, along with a bronze mask. His entire outfit resembled that of the ancient pharaohs of Egypt. Izuku didn't I choose it? He exclaimed, alarmed, because he didn't have much experience using this form. He barely knew a few tricks, but nothing more. It doesn't matter. There are only 5 minutes left, I have enough time. Saying that, he raises his fists in a defensive gesture. What are you waiting for, Kachan? Here I am, he says in a deeper voice. Bakugo. Haha, are you so stupid that you won't use one of your best transformations? Referring to Wrath, Armadillo, and Diamond, obviously those would be the strongest for him. Izuku I don't need Wrath to defeat you, any form is enough for me. He said with determination in his words. Bakugo. TCH, who cares? He mentioned a little chubby cheeks, then wasted no time and lunged at him using his explosions to go faster. Die. Once he was close enough, the ash-haired man used his right hand to make another detonation that was directed at the mummy's chest. This caused the force of the explosion to slam him against a wall. Izuku AHG complained about the pain he had in his chest and back, although due to his anatomy it wasn't a big deal. Bakugo was preparing another attack. Perhaps it wasn't his strongest alien form, but it was certainly the best when it came to evasion and mobility. Just as he was about to attack, Izuku slid down and extended the bandages on his right hand, wrapping them around the ash blonde's torso. With a swift movement, he threw him against the wall. Bakugo. He complained of back pain, but it was nothing. You think you can beat me with cheap tricks? Izuku Well, a while ago you wanted these tricks. He said to gain confidence and mock Bakugo. Come, provoking the ash-haired boy. Monitoring room. Both Professor All Might and his students were intently watching the fight between Bakugo and Midoriya, as well as the one between Yaoyorozu and Iida. Moreover, they weren't the only ones observing. The principal was also closely watching the confrontation between the green-haired and the ash-blonde boy from his computer in the principal's office. Nezu. The Omnitrix also has the DNA of a Tepkufin. Interesting. I mention the mutant animal just to see how this confrontation will end. Return. Thanks to the agility of his mummy form, it was quite easy to dodge Bakugo's attacks. This was also because Midoriya knew Kachan's movements well. But after a few minutes, the red-eyed boy fainted, throwing a punch only to detonate another explosion. The magnitude of the attack caused part of his torso to disappear, leaving a hole in its place. Those watching thought he was being killed, but thanks to the physiology of the bandages, he would only feel a burning sensation. Katsuki was also stunned by his power. Izuku took advantage of this to extend the ends of his bandages, wrapping them around Kachan's body and delivering a charged punch with his right hand, stunning him for a few moments. He looked down at his torso and sighed in relief as he watched it slowly regenerate. As if it were a spider, the pharaoh-shaped alien entangled him in the webs that made up its body. Izuku left the fight to prioritize the bomb, even though there were only 2 minutes left in the mission. He didn't want to take any risks. As he approached the door, he saw his teammate Yaoyorozu. She was surprised and happy to see him. Surprised because she hadn't seen him in that form before, only vaguely from the drawing she'd made a few hours earlier, and happy to know he was all right. Izuku Yaoyorozu, are you okay? He asked in a worried voice and approached the aforementioned girl. Momo. Yes, I was able to defeat Iida using a flashbang grenade and a titanium net. I think it will take him a while to break free. She said proudly of herself for this feat. And what about you? I heard several explosions. That was Bakugo, wasn't it? The green-haired girl mentioned. Izuku Wow, you're amazing, Yaoyorozu. The mummy-like young man exclaimed, moving his forearms up and down in excitement. But about 3 seconds later, he heard several footsteps followed by tremors, deducing that it was Bakugo who had somehow regained consciousness and managed to free himself. Yaoyorozu, I think we still have some work to do. As he said that, he lightly tapped the watch on his right shoulder with his right palm. Upon contact, Another bright green glow obscured the area, causing the raven-haired girl to shield her eyes from the intense light. Izuku had transformed into another form called a Madrillo, one of his strongest. However, unlike in Mummy, his mobility was now severely restricted due to his large, robust size, making him very uncomfortable in the narrow hallways. Momo. Hey, Midoriya, why did you change form? She asked with an anime-style sweat drop, but personally that was her favorite transformation since she saw him in action against the mud villain. Izuku. I know it's sudden, but we have little time to finish, but we shouldn't underestimate Kachan. He said this with some discomfort as his heavy armor brushed against the walls of the place. Why does he never give me wrath? He complained, but even so, a barrier made of metal and flesh will be a good obstacle. The ash-haired man, now at the other end of the same corridor as the duo, wore a hateful expression. He clenched his fists tightly and ground his teeth so hard he could break them. Seeing the timer on the ceiling, he panicked even more and, without hesitation, pointed his right arm at them. He was holding a grenade-shaped gauntlet and grasping its pin. Bakugo. I'm tired of this, give me the damn bomb and I'll let you go, he said with determination and fury, refusing to lose against a Deku in their first confrontation. Izuku. Wait, did she say that in the singular? He wondered to himself. Apparently, his large size blocked Bakugo's view, and he hadn't noticed the raven-haired girl present. Yaoyorozu, he said softly so as not to arouse suspicion, but he saw that she was creating a rifle with tranquilizer darts. It seems she thinks the same as me. Kachan, don't do this, it's crazy. There could be injuries, he said calmly so as not to upset him more than he already was. Bakugo, you'll be the only one hurt. You don't belong here. Just because you have that damn watch you think you're a hero. He yelled, making the freckled boy lower his gaze slightly. You see. Now get out of the way and I'll show everyone who's the best. He was still holding the grenade gauntlet safety pin. Izuku. I'm afraid it won't be possible. I glanced sideways at the raven-haired girl who had a gun loaded with tranquilizers and gave a thumbs up as a sign that she was ready. Now, I shouted at the top of my lungs only to abruptly step aside, making way for the black-haired girl. Yaoyorozu, with both hands on the weapon and her eye on the sight, pulled the trigger, firing the dart toward Bakugo's neck. However, he gave her enough time to pull the safety, unleashing a massive explosion before being stunned by the serum's chemicals. Izuku panicked. His brain offered only one option. Without warning, he lunged toward Momo and wrapped his body around hers to protect her from the blast. Minutes later, a worried and frightened All Might was searching through the rubble of the building. The explosion had been so powerful it destroyed half the building. He had already found an unconscious Bakugo in Iida, who was unharmed thanks to his armor, which had cushioned the impact, though it was badly damaged. However, he found no trace of young Midoriya or Miss Yaoyorozu. His time in that muscular form was running out, but he didn't care at all. His priority was his students. After a few minutes, a large pile of building fragments in the distance began to shake, revealing Izuku in his armadillo form and Momo, who was clinging to him. Izuku. Yaoyorozu, are you feeling all right? He said worriedly while carrying her bridal style. Momo. I think so. Having quite a bit of dirt on her body, but she was fine when she was in contact with Izuku in armadillo form. Her cheeks were a reddish tint, however, she didn't feel embarrassed. It feels quite warm and I feel safe, could it be? All Might. Thank goodness you're both all right. You two were doing quite well, he said, but then he noticed the position the two young people were in. Did I interrupt something? Momo. Izuku. We find ourselves in the mansion of the prestigious Yaoyorozu. In one of the many rooms, the black-haired girl lay on the bed, hugging a yellow pillow and resting her head on it. She was quite pensive, reflecting on what had happened during training and how it felt to be protected from Bakugo's imminent explosion. Momo. Why do I get so nervous? I feel like a little girl, she whispered, staring up at the ceiling to think. Maybe if I sleep a little longer I'll relax, she said, looking at the clock in her room, implying that it was early. As she closed her eyes, the first image that came to mind was the moment Izuku, in his armadillo form, saved her from the explosion, and how he carried her like a princess. A warm smile unconsciously formed on her face as she clutched the pillow tighter, pretending to be Izuku. She realized what she was thinking, blushing and waking up with a start. Momo. He opened his eyes in an exaggerated way as a red tint took over his cheeks. Why is this happening to me? He asked himself nervously. He remained silent for a few seconds and sighed to calm himself. His torso quickly began to glow, indicating he was using his creation quirk. He was doing this to distract himself from what he saw. However, when the process was complete, the Matryoshka doll was different from the others he always made in his likeness. This one was yellow, its head resembled a Roman helmet with 2 green dots for eyes, and to top it all off, it had Midoriya's clock symbol on its chest. Momo. Her brain couldn't comprehend what she had created or what the reason was, but she stopped thinking about this strange situation and began to examine the miniature armadillo doll closely. It's cute. Time skip. We find ourselves in the Class 1A classroom. Everyone was sitting quietly because Mr. Aizawa was giving them a lecture on how to handle situations as a hero. Izuku Midoriya noticed several people watching him from the moment he entered, one of them being his friend Yaoyorozu. Whenever he turned to look at her, their eyes met, causing them both to feel nervous and tense. An hour passed, and the bell rang, signaling recess. Aizawa. You can all rest now. In the next hour, I have an activity that everyone will enjoy. 1A. Yes, everyone was going back to the dining room. A green-haired boy, while walking along, was curiously looking at his watch. He always did this in his free time to see if it had more hidden functions or more transformations. Momo. Hello Midoriya, she said, approaching his side. Are you doing it again? She asked, glancing at the clock which she thought was an effect of his quirk. Izuku. Yeah, he says sheepishly as he gets closer. Before they could delve deeper into their conversation, Principal Nezu, who resembled a mouse, appeared before them. Those present, along with other students in the hallway, stood at attention and tensed, but the raven-haired girl and the green-haired boy were especially tense when he approached the two. Nezu. Mr. Midoriya, may you accompany me to my office? He asked while holding a cup of tea in his right paw. Izuku. Yes, sir. He says nervously because he thought he'd gotten himself into trouble. I'm sorry, Yaoyorozu, I won't be able to join you for lunch. Momo. No problem, maybe next time. Before going to the dining room, she bowed to the principal and finally left. About 5 minutes later, Izuku and Nezu were in the aforementioned office. The freckled boy was a bundle of nerves, wondering what he might have done wrong or if he had broken any of the establishment's rules, but he was relieved when the dog-mouse hybrid. Nezu. Relax, Mr. Midoriya, there's no problem. I just want to talk to you about your quirk, he said as he settled into his desk chair and typed on his computer. Izuku. Oh, okay, he says in a calmer tone as the animal hybrid gestures to the chair for him to sit down. But is there a problem with my quirk? He asks, sitting down in front of the principal's desk. Nezu. Well, I find it curious that a quirk has the ability to transform you into 10 different creatures. He mentions this while still typing on his computer. Could you explain how that's possible? Izuku. Well, I don't really know how to explain that either, to be honest. He scratched the back of his neck nervously, like a nervous tick. I'll try. Nezu. Maybe it's not because it's a quirk, he says, looking him in the eyes while maintaining his serene demeanor, but because of another method, pointing with his eyes at the watch. Like the Omnitrix. Izuku. What? With an expression between fear and astonishment he said, already knowing the reason for how he could transform. How does Yo know and is that its name? He wondered in his mind because in all the time he was using it he never knew what the watch's name was. Nezu. I recommend you calm down, Mr. Midoriya. I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you, okay? He asked, still maintaining his calm demeanor. Izuku. The freckled boy was bewildered, asking himself a million questions about how he knew about the existence of this watch now called Omnitrix, but upon hearing it, he let out a long, deep sigh to suppress his nerves. Okay, Nezu. Perfect, what you have on your wrist is not just any watch, it's the Omnitrix, an artifact that contains the genetic code of the various living beings that inhabit the galaxy. As he says, to turn the screen of his monitor to the boy, a wolf-like being showing the video of his first day of practice, a Pyronite playing the recording of the entrance exam, or in the case of a Tepkufan changing the video to the confrontation between Mummy and Bakugo. Izuku. So they're aliens? He asked, and Nezu nodded in response. But how do you know? You created them? He asked, now in amazement, but still stunned by what he'd been told. Nezu. No, Mr. Midoriya, if I had created it, I would have taken it away from you a long time ago. The mouse said, making Izuku shudder even more than he already was. Relax, it was just a joke to lighten the mood. As he said that, with his left claw he opened his desk drawer only to take out a round, red-colored plaque and placed it on top of it for the boy to look at. Nezu. Before becoming the headmaster of this academy, I had a job protecting humanity from threats across the galaxy. We called ourselves plumbers. Izuku. Plumbers, I've never heard of them. Are they some kind of organization like hero agencies? He asked curiously, since he had never heard that name before. Nezu. It's a secret organization, as I said before. We deal with otherworldly threats, meaning aliens. During my time as a plumber, we heard about an artifact capable of transforming into any living being in the galaxy. He gets up from his seat, takes a few steps, and approaches the boy's watch. May I, Izuku? Sure, he said, still bewildered, and just watched as the principal was thoroughly checking the Omnitrix beforehand. Nezu. How did you find it? Still looking at the metamorphosis mechanism in detail. Izuku said, it was 8 or 9 months ago, I was in the forest, at night it fell like a meteorite and this appeared inside the satellite, recalling in detail the scene where it all began. Nezu. I see. He then activates the watch, revealing an alien silhouette in black. Can I try? Izuku. No problem. By the way, what were you doing with the plumbers? He asked. Not knowing anything about that organization, it piqued his curiosity. Nezu. I was part of the research unit. Most of it was in the field, but I was in charge of examining alien artifacts and bodies. After finishing speaking, he crushes the button with his claws, beginning the transformation. Upon pressing it, a bright green light began to emerge from the watch, and in an instant, Izuku transformed from his human form into that of a werewolf with long, flowing gray hair. He had 3 agile claws on each limb and also possessed spiked formations on his elbows and shoulders. This form was known as Lichen. Nezu. Fascinating, the wolf from the first day, he says, controlling one of his kind for the second time. And what do you know about this form? Izuku L. Well, my senses are heightened, I have a good sense of smell, agility, and a great sense of hearing. Says the now werewolf, standing and listing all his abilities with his claws. Nezu. Is that all? He asked, raising an eyebrow in doubt. Izuku nodded. I see, maybe you know a few tricks. He stood on his desk and gestured with his claw for him to come closer. But not everything. When Izuku got close enough, the mutant mouse, using its knowledge of wolf anatomy, touched a sensitive spot on the underside of its snout. This triggered a mechanical reaction, causing its jaw to split into 4 hinges, exposing its vocal cords and throat. This action terrified the freckled boy, who thought he had broken his jaw. However, when it opened, he felt no pain, but also because of this, he couldn't speak, or at least not clearly. Then he looked at the principal for an answer. Nezu. I'm sorry, Mr. Midoriya, but it was the only way. He climbed down from the desk to get closer to the werewolf. Werewolves have the ability to emit an ultrasonic howl. Izuku L. Eo. He could only pronounce those words with his jaw open in 4 places. He tried to test out said howl, but was suddenly hit in the face by a paper ball from Nezu. Nezu. I don't recommend you do that now, it might scare the students and stun me. Try closing it like you always do with your mouth. Izuku L. He twisted both his upper and lower jaws, and a few seconds later, with some effort, he was able to close his mouth on both sides. I never thought I could do that. He asked, surprised, while touching his mouth to try again. Nezu. Well, I examined a corpse of the same race. The agents said it was a legend, the locals called them the Yenildushi. Obviously, it was dead, which is why I was able to analyze its anatomy. He said this calmly, but Izuku's eyes widened in surprise. I propose a deal, Mr. Midoriya. Izuku L. Which deal? Nezu. Well, With my knowledge I could help you and find your true potential in every alien form. After finishing speaking from his desk, he begins to sip his tea. Izuku L. Sounds good, and with all due respect, what's the catch? Questioned the wolf-like boy. Nezu. Calm down, it's understandable. I only want one thing, and that is for you to use the Omnitrix for the greater good and never for your personal convenience. Is that clear? When he said the last part, he became more serious than usual. Izuku L. I promise you, sir. I would never do that either. I always wanted to be a hero and I wouldn't ruin it for anything. He also adopts a serious tone when speaking. Nezu. I'm glad. Well, that's all. You can go with your companions. Izuku L. Okay, I just have to wait until. He was interrupted by the beep of the watch and a red flash also appeared on the Omnitrix that was on the front of his waist. Izuku. That was convenient, he said, now in his human form. One day after the events, our protagonist and his class are on a bus wearing their respective hero costumes. Yesterday, before classes ended, Teacher Aizawa explained that they would be doing rescue drills at another facility, the USJ. In the vehicle everyone was talking about their own things or about the facilities where they were going to practice, but a girl with dark green hair sitting next to Midoriya asked the following. Suyu. I always say what I think, so Midoriya. The girl with frog-like features gave the floor to the boy with 4 freckles on each cheek. Izuku. Yes, Asui. He said somewhat shyly, speaking to another girl he barely knew. Suyu. I prefer to be called Su, but I wanted to ask you how exactly your quirk works. She asked, placing her index finger on her chin in a gesture of doubt, as only she knew how. Kirishima. I'm curious too. The boy with spiky red hair who was on Midoriya's left side spoke up. Izuku. Well, my quirk allows me to transform into 10 different creatures. He said, making up that excuse so they wouldn't investigate. Suyu. And you do it with that? The green-haired girl asked again, pointing at the watch, which was biologically fused to her body. Juro. He told me his quirk caused a protrusion that makes him look like a clock. The girl with jacks in her ears mentioned this while sitting next to Bakugo because there was no more room, while looking towards the freckled boy. Isn't that right, Momo? It would be something similar to your headphones, the raven-haired girl said, joining the conversation. But I still find it curious. Izuku. Well, it's just that I haven't fully learned how my quirk works yet. I just put it into action and that's it, the green-haired boy said nervously while scratching the back of his head. Kirishima. Relax, Midoriya. At least your quirk is quite versatile, but you looked very manly in that giant armor form. Remembering how he used that transformation in his early days at the academy. Izuku. Thanks, I call it Armadillo and it's the second strongest form I have. Denki. And what would your strongest form be? Can you show it now? Asked the boy with a black lightning bolt-shaped lock of hair. Izuku. Well, I couldn't, because if I transformed I could destroy the bus with just my size. He was about to continue speaking, however, he felt the bus stop and turned his head towards where his teacher was. Aizawa. All right everyone, get off, we've arrived, said the man with the scarf and dark circles under his eyes, just to get off the bus first, waiting for the rest of his students to get off as well so they could begin the first rescue lessons. All the students of Class 1A disembarked the bus in an orderly fashion, thanks to the orders of their class president, Iida Tenya. Upon reaching the ground, they were all impressed by the building's structure, which resembled a dome, its size rivaling that of UA High School. However, a few simply looked indifferent or didn't seem to care much about it. At the entrance of the building stood a man dressed in clothing very similar to an astronaut's suit. This was 13, one of the best rescue heroes in Japan. 13. Hello young students and heroes, I hope you had a nice bus trip. This is the man with the space-age appearance speaking. Uraraka. Wow, I can't believe it, he's here, 13. The brown-haired girl raised her voice slightly upon seeing one of her favorite heroes still near the bus with the rest of his classmates. Like others, he copied that behavior from the girl, especially Midoriya, since he was a fan of all kinds of superheroes and especially All Might. 13. Hee, I'm so glad everyone is excited, he said in a happy tone, then took a few steps towards where the older one was, with dark circles under his eyes from lack of sleep. Aizawa. Why isn't All Might here? He whispered to his partner, explaining that the plan was to conduct the rescue class alongside the symbol of peace. 13. It seems his time is up and he's resting. I speak in a very low tone that only the other adult would hear so that none of the children hear or say anything. Aizawa. I see, we'll have to do it without him. He sighed wearily because he had planned to sleep in less than 5 minutes, but that won't be possible thanks to All Might's delay. Alright guys, follow me, we'll start training in a few minutes. The others, as if they were some kind of androids, said, hi, in unison, only to follow the duo of teachers inside the building. The first thing they saw were large, detached buildings and a colossal body of water, comparable to the sea at a beach, in which, with a little effort, they could make out a beached ship. 13. Alright guys, welcome to USJ. Here we'll practice rescue training with simulated scenarios based on natural disasters like floods or earthquakes, and the first thing you'll learn is. When he tried to say another word, he couldn't because in the middle of the building, where several paths connected to the simulation, a dark purple mist appeared, slowly forming an oval portal. From this portal, a head began to emerge, followed by the rest of the body. It was a man with an unusual appearance, his clothing entirely black. Human hands, gray in color, were attached to his arms, shoulders, and even his face, matching his hair. However, this wasn't all. More figures began to emerge from the same portal, some with neutral expressions, others with the expressions of true psychopaths. The last to appear was a monster over 2 meters tall with completely black skin. Its head resembled that of a bird, and its skull was open, its brain visible to the naked eye. Kirishima. Wow, even the villains are so realistic. The redhead said excitedly, but some of his classmates didn't share the same expression. 13. This isn't a simulation. I'm speaking seriously and worried at the same time. Aizawa, take them to the exit now. Aizawa. Yes, students, follow me quickly, don't go slowly, and stay calm. However, when they saw that the main entrance was now obscured by the same fog that transported the villains, if that wasn't enough, sharp yellow eyes emerged, implying that it was not just a portal but a living being. Bakugo. What the hell is that thing? The boy, who resembled a Muslim, shouted, intending to smash his face in even if he was in a gaseous state. Excuse the intrusion on your school day, but my name is Kuroigi, a member of the League of Villains, and our objective is to eliminate All Might, along with you, if possible. Mineta. League of Villains. The smallest in the class spoke with panic in his voice, and he wasn't the only one afraid. Izuku. Kill All Might. He asked in his mind, still stunned by what that gaseous villain had said. Without them being able to take any action, this same villain began creating portals similar to the first one, just to take some of them to various locations in the place so that they could be eliminated by the League of Villains. If they could describe what was happening in the brains of those prone to becoming heroes, they would. He describes it with a feeling of helplessness and fear, because it was obvious that they were all teenagers without any experience. However, this could be proof not only that they can be heroes, but that they deserve to be. Most of the students appeared in the various natural disaster scenarios that plagued the USJ facility due to the villain's quirk. The remaining survivors stayed with their teachers. Izuku Midoriya, however, sank into the deep waters of the aquatic zone before he could touch the clock. Izuku. How did they know we were here? What kind of power did that smoke have? They have the strength to kill All Might. He was so shocked that he could only think of those things, but as he sank, instinctively he began to swim upwards to get some air. Izuku. Didibo transform Armine aquatic threat. In the midst of this, while trying to activate his watch, a villain with shark-like characteristics suddenly approached the green-haired boy in a dangerous manner. Villain. Now you're my prey, kid. Just as he was about to be attacked by the villain, Izuku couldn't even turn on the Omnitrix, but before he could be devoured, Tsuyu entered the scene, kicking the shark right in the head and deflecting it from its attack trajectory. Tsuyu. Midoriya. She would extend her long tongue to wrap around the boy and, swimming at full speed, they would leave that area, so that the same frog girl could throw Midoriya onto a yacht, followed by the female. Midoriya coughed. Thank you so much. He coughed a little because water got into his mouth and nose. Tsuyu, you're welcome, but please call me Tsuyu. Minutes. Suyu, please. Are they here too? The great boy screamed in fear, with a sea of tears in his eyes and a couple of snotty noses. Suyu. Calm down, Mineta. We're in trouble and we can't get like this. Izuku. Asked Suyu, you're right, we can't stay like this while our companions are in danger. We must find a way to reunite at the entrance again. Minutes. Why don't we just stay hidden here until All Might shows up and defeats this entire league of villains? Suyu. That could be a solution, but considering there are a lot of villains nearby, looking for us sooner or later, and our only option will be to fight. Suyu's comments were direct, but accurate, because the fact that the league members gradually began to surround the yacht caused Mineta to panic. On the other hand, Izuku had questions in his mind, such as, why would they attack All Might to kill him? What is your conviction? Why now? Could it be because of what it represents as a symbol of peace? Did they have enough power to assassinate him? How did they know you were here? She had hundreds of questions, none of which had a satisfying answer. However, these thoughts turned into rapid murmurs that only caused Suyu to flick her tongue on the back of her neck. Izuku. Ouch. Why is that, Suyu? You murmur a lot and also. With a slight gesture of his eyes, he indicated how a large group of villains had gathered, all with quirks specialized in aquatic areas, who were just floating there, talking amongst themselves about when it was time to kill them. Izuku. God, this is going from bad to worse, but he pays attention to the villains. Why don't they confront us? Suyu. Perhaps they are waiting for someone else. Minutes. But what for? There are already too many of them. They'll kill us, and I didn't even get to touch a breast. Finally, he received a tongue slap from Suyu, not only because of how vulgar it was, but also to calm him down and prevent him from having a nervous breakdown. Izuku. Thank you, but this makes me think they knew the time, day, and place where we were. It seems they were planning this attack. Why waste time and the opportunity to attack if they were preparing it? Suyu. In fact, I find it curious that if they were planning it, they shouldn't have put me in the flooded sector because I have more of an advantage here with my frog quirk. I mentioned this while placing a finger on his chin. If I were in the fire zone, then I would have serious problems. Izuku. It's true, perhaps they knew the schedules for this trip to USJ. He slams his fist, palm open, reaching a conclusion. But they don't know who we are or what we can do. Determining this, he would activate his watch in selection mode. Minutes. What do you plan to do now? He commented, sounding calmer than before but still fearing for his life. Izuku. In one of his interviews, All Might commented while speaking, he searches the Omnitrix roulette wheel for the most capable alien in this situation. The best time to attack the most experienced villains is when you have the element of surprise on your side. Suyu. If that's the case, maybe there's a chance, but if we do something, we need to get to know our quirks better. The two boys in the course nodded, each explaining exactly what they did. For example, Mineta's sticky spheres that wouldn't dissolve in 5 minutes, and that Suyu could also secrete an acid-like substance from her stomach, but that wouldn't work, she herself thought. Suyu. Midoriya, you said you had 10 different forms, can any of them help us? Izuku. In fact, there is one that can help us. I contribute by having the silhouette of said alien inside the selection disc. Well, listen. Midoriya's words were abruptly interrupted by the incessant pounding on the yacht's hull, caused by one of the aquatic villains who had lost his temper and attacked with his quirk. If they weren't going to leave, they were going to force them out, so they began to destroy the exterior of the vessel, causing it to sink and the students, especially Mineta, to become extremely agitated. Minutes. Don't come near me. I won't die without touching some boobs first. In desperation, he would launch all the spheres from his head to stop them from hitting some villain, sticking them with the adhesive, while others just float in the water. This caused the aggressors to back down for a few moments, as they didn't know the exact nature of the quirk, something the UA students took advantage of. Izuku. That'll buy us some time, but not much. Suyu. Get him out of here and head to the coast as close to the entrance as possible. Suyu. But what about you? The villains aren't naive enough to all fight against you. Izuku. They will be with aquatic threats, but please, he would look her in the eyes, his voice full of determination, as evident in his gaze as in his eyes. If he truly knew what he was doing, he wouldn't be so confident. Trust me, I know what to do. Suyu initially disliked the idea of leaving Midoriya to his fate, though she didn't show it at first glance. She was genuinely worried about him and whether he was tempting fate. But then, seeing his confident actions, she sighed in defeat and said, "Suyu. We trust you, Gero," she commented, extending her tongue to the point where it caught Mineta and began to run away. Minutes. Shirtehei couldn't quite mimic his line because of Suyu's grip, but it was understandable, which made Izuku smile in relief. "Izuku. All right, it's time to be a hero. Please don't change me at the last minute." Without wasting time, he struck the clock face with his palm, causing it to emit a radiant green light. The villains stopped their attacks to look up and see what was happening, and all they could see was a strange red being peeking out the edge. Villain 1. "Hey, who is that?" Villain 2. "Weren't there supposed to be only 3 people on that ship? Is he a hero?" Villain 3. "Does that matter now? Keep attacking." Izuku AM. "No villains. Prepare for aquatic threat. Shine." He dove into the water at Bakugo's scream. Why did he do it? He wanted to take every measure to be as unpredictable as possible and have every possible advantage on his side. Izuku AM. "I never thought I'd say those words." Upon submerging in the water, he soon encountered a shark-like villain who lunged at him, intent on biting him. Izuku managed to partially pry open the villain's jaw and kneed him, forcing him back. Izuku AM. "I must give them a lot of problems so they focus on me and escape with the rest of the class." Villain 1. "Hold it, it looks like his quirk is that armor biological reasoning," the group leader. Villain 2. "Idiot, I'm going to smash that shell to pieces," said the shark as he lunged again. Izuku AM. "Come here then." He acted in the same way, lunging towards the. When he tried to launch his first attack, 2 other villains coming from below intercepted the mollusk man, grabbing his arms and anchoring his legs with their own, so that he had no chance to move. Izuku AM. "You disgusting cowards. Fight like men." He struggled a bit to keep up the act. Villain 4. Hey, heroes shouldn't talk like that, or are you just a cheap copy?" The shark attacked again, sinking its incisors into the helmet protecting his head. It wouldn't be the only one to attack, as one by one the rest of the group came to pummel the boy like a punching bag. Izuku was taking too much of a risk by letting himself be beaten like this. The goal was to gather as many intruders as possible without them discovering the whereabouts of their companions. Although his armor protected him from the shark's bites, more villains arrived to beat him up. All those attacks accumulated until he felt sharp, stabbing pains throughout his body. There was good news. The whole group had captured the boy's attention, so he no longer needed to worry, and he wasn't going anywhere. Izuku AM. "You think so? Then watch, you idiots." A powerful jet of pressurized water shot from the holes in his hands, striking the first 2 men who had been holding him by his limbs. Once free, he brought his palms together and punched the shark in the lower jaw, sending it flying. Villain 1. "How did he do it? Quick, subdue him, I'll open a crack in that crustacean shell." He shouted in annoyance at seeing that they were taking too long with a single individual, but when he was meters away he prepared to attack him with the intention of killing him. Midoriya won't fall into the same trap again. That's why he opens both hands, revealing 2 circular holes in his palms. It looks as if water would be absorbed through those hollow openings. Izuku AM. Mineta said that his spheres didn't dissolve upon contact with water. The crustacean's intentions were already clear in his thoughts. Like a boat's turbine, the boy spun on his own axis at an initial speed of 400 revolutions per minute RPM, causing the first villain's bubble attack to dissipate and be absorbed by the vortex Midoriya was creating. Villain 1. "A barrier won't protect you, Tiburcio the Kid." Guys, physical attacks are already happening. He was more suited to ranged attacks. He didn't have the strength to deliver a powerful punch with his bare fists. That's why there were so many villains with melee aquatic quirks. Tiburcio. "Don't give me orders, Tadpole. Load up." Most were far away, but together they began to swim at full speed with the intention of killing and dismembering the child. However, they felt something else. The closer they got to his location, the faster they swam, to a point where they couldn't control or even stop. It was as if an external force was pulling them against their will. Villain. "It can't be. She couldn't believe her eyes at what she was seeing. Is that a typhoon? At the moment he said it, he too was involuntarily drawn to the natural phenomenon. It was real. Izuku Midoriya accelerated his engine speed so much that it reached 1500 RPM in just a few moments. This huge difference caused a powerful whirlpool to form in his center, reaching deep into the water and up to the surface. Right in the affected area were Mineta's spheres, which were absorbed by the whirlpool and pulled to its center, the center of which was Izuku Midoriya. Izuku AM. Now, shortly after being intercepted by all the aquatic-themed villains and Mineta's sticky spheres, he swam downwards, increasing the momentum because the typhoon was still extending into the depths. The villains clashed with each other upon reaching the underwater source of the tornado, however. Villain 2. Hey, get out of the way. Can't you see he's already escaping below, and why are we floating? Villain 5. I'm talking to the guy stuck to my back, do you like me or what? Tiburcio. Let me go, you effeminate boys. He had the villain stuck to his abdomen and anchored to his left arm. Villain 3. Hey, who's grabbing my ass? He reached out to pull away, but as he did so, he felt a round, very sticky surface. Seeing that it was one of those spheres that the dwarf student had thrown, he could only sigh in defeat at being stuck to a bunch of idiots. Literally. Izuku AM. I'm sending them a letter to Tartarus. He greeted the villains who were going to the surface with 2 fingers to his forehead and went directly to regroup with his companions Tsuyu and Mineta. Sometimes, driven by fear and desperation, someone's actions can unknowingly help them, giving them that extra push they need. That's why Midoriya was so grateful to his dwarf classmate. Without him, there was a real possibility of being captured, or worse, killed. The other groups that were forcibly separated by the villain from the mist were all in the same situation as Izuku, Tsuyu, and Mineta. This meant they had no choice but to confront the villains to escape the disaster and rescue scenarios. For some, it was easier thanks to the powerful quirks possessed by the Class 1A students, and also because of the arrogance of the intruders themselves, who underestimated their targets, leading to their imminent defeat. Aizawa, the homeroom teacher of Class 1A, was still on the front lines, attacking and defending against all the villains who approached him. This wasn't proving too difficult, thanks to his ability to block most of their powers, except for those involving mutations. Uraraka. Wow, it looks like everything's going to be alright, she said, impressed by how he restrained the villains. Sato. Oh yeah, that's true, but I feel helpless because I can't help him. Shoji. I feel the same way, but we'd be more of a hindrance than a help. Ashido. All that's left is for Iida to return with the reinforcements and it'll all be over. Nomu Matalo. Exclaimed the perpetrator of this attack, the one with dark clothing and hands in the process of being composed hanging on his body, including one that acted as a mask to hide his identity. Meanwhile, we return to the trio who had emerged unscathed from the fire simulation. They weren't far from the action zone. They were right on the edge of the plaza, only sticking their heads out to see everything. Mineta. What is that thing? Here. Before he could say anything, his mouth was covered by Tsuyu's hand. Tsuyu. Don't shout so much or they'll hear us. He complained about this while looking ahead, wondering how they were going to get to the entrance and join the rest. Or so he thought, because then he felt pressure on his chest and when he looked to his side he could see the act of the crime. Mineta putting his head over to feel those melons. Izuku AM. Tiene razón Tsuyu. Midoriya thought that if that thing that had once been a human being was the League's secret weapon, then Aizawa wouldn't stand a chance. Even if he used his quirk, it would be practically useless due to the Nomu's anatomy and physiology. A direct confrontation would be suicide without brute force. Izuku AM. But we must help the teacher or else. He could only watch as Tsuyu submerged Mineta against his will to the point where the oxygen bubbles no longer appeared. Tsuyu. What? He's asking for it, Jero. Izuku AM. Sometimes you can be terrifying. You, aiming heroes. Upon hearing the furious scream, the trio looked ahead to see who it was. They all shared a feeling of fear upon seeing the owner of that voice. It was that deranged man with the withered hands, who had heard them a while ago. He just had to wait for the right moment when they were distracted so he could attack by surprise, and that's exactly what he did. However, just centimeters from touching Asui Tsuyu's face, Izuku interposed himself as a barrier, using his forearm to intercept her attack. Tsuyu, Mineta, Midoriya. The crustacean couldn't think of anything else. It was as if his brain had frozen, and he only listened to his instincts. This had happened before, when he had to fight the sludge villain to save Bakugo, or during the practical exam with the 0-point robot. This was the same. However, every decision and action he made would always have a consequence. This one. Izuku am. What is this? How? His arm began to turn almost as pale as coal itself, and little by little his exoskeleton creaked more and more until it fragmented. Tamura. This is a surprise. It usually takes barely 2 seconds for my victims to turn to dust, but that biological armor tries to minimize the damage. Let's see if that happens to your head. Just as she drew back her left arm to attack Midoriya, a web encircled it, pulling her back forcefully. But to her surprise, her quirk wasn't working properly either, as it had stopped disintegrating the boy's arm. Aizawa. Those kids. The anti-quirk master was in critical condition, his left arm hanging limply by his side. He was suffering from internal bleeding, broken bones, and numerous bruises. Nevertheless, he was still there, summoning the strength to keep the kids from who knows where away. He could only manage to lift his head, and from the shadow of his long hair, 2 red dots appeared. Aizawa. They're in my care. He would pull it closer with his only good arm. Tamura. You're still alive after all. He said this to continue being pulled by this fabric that acts as a rope. You don't have even a fraction of All Might's power, but you're just as unbearable as he is. He would stop fighting with the gang and go directly to him, but before he could even attack, he was hit from behind by a torrent of water that made him fall to the ground with tremendous pain in the impacted area. Tamura. That brat, has he lost his fear of death? He said this, stopping and turning to face the trajectory of the shot. Indeed, Midoriya emerged from the water, his right arm raised, and a few drops fell from the hole in his palm, hinting at its origin. Although he was saved from Tamura's attack, Aizawa was not safe. Tsuyu. Professor, watch out. Mineta. Behind you, the Nomu. Aizawa. K. He was so injured he could barely stand and was disoriented enough to understand what was happening. His quirks had already been deactivated, but they were still red. This time, it was from the irritation caused by the overuse of his power, which prevented him from understanding, much less orienting himself. Therefore, he did not see the monster coming behind him, which delivered a final coup de grace to the professor right in the spine, and the force of its attack sent him flying into the sky and crashing against the stairs leading up to the gate of the complex. Izuku am. Guys. He could have saved him, but he wasn't quick enough, and that's why he clenched his fists. He blamed himself, even hated himself, for not returning the favor of saving his life moments before. However, that same hatred would be the perfect catalyst to continue fighting and hold these guys off. Izuku am. Go with the rest and leave with the others. If you can ask for help, do so. I didn't know Iida had left earlier. Mineta. Midoriya, have you gone crazy? Izuku am. Now. He turned his gaze to his companion, who paled. Although this form prevented him from expressing himself facially, just hearing his voice made it clear he wasn't going to play. Tsuyu. I don't know if you're brave or foolish, but good luck. Jero. Having said that, he would go with Mineta to help his teacher. Izuku gave a thumbs up to reassure himself that everything was going to be alright. The Nomu in front of him slowly approached until it bumped into Tamura's arm. The beast simply stood still. It understood that it had to remain motionless, like a dog given a command with just hand signals. Tamura. In my opinion, you're dumber than you look. Why don't you run away? Izuku am. It's quite simple. You come here to threaten my classmates with death, along with the symbol of peace, and you hurt our teachers. He would adopt a fighting stance with his right foot forward, as well as his fists, with the left covering his chest and the other in front. Izuku am. Don't think you'll get away with escaping. A hero wouldn't do that, and I won't either. Izuku's determination to bring his master to justice was evident in his words. Upon hearing this, Tamura's eyes sharpened like razors, and he scratched his neck with such a strong nervous tick that dry pieces of his skin fell off. Tamura. How disgusting. Those words, the very words a selfless hero would say to save everyone and confront those who wish evil. For others, this might offer a glimmer of hope and respect, but with Tamura, his ideals fill him with revulsion, because he reminded him so much of All Might. Tamura. If you so badly wish to be a martyr. With his feet, he makes a powerful burst of speed, and in a matter of seconds, the distance between them disappears. Izuku, who barely had time to react, saw his eyes widen and let out a small groan. Tamura. Then let me help you. With both hands he touches the pectoral area of his scarlet shell. Izuku. How could? He was very fast, there's no doubt about that. Stop it. With his left hand, the same one worn down by Tamura, he grabbed the pale man's wrist and threw him far away, causing him to lift his other hand from his chest. Thanks to this, Tamura lost his balance for a few moments, and Izuku took advantage of the situation to unleash another powerful jet of water from both bio-cannons, sending him flying as far away as possible. Even though he managed to push it away, Izuku looked down, noticing how his bio-armor, at least in the chest area, was so gray and dry that many cracks had appeared. Even tiny pieces were falling off. Izuku. It only takes a second and it puts me in this state. He thought to himself, but if he thought about it more it would only make things worse for him. So he attacks again with the same attack, this time unleashing another torrent of pressurized water. He'd already lost track of how long he remained in this form. For the first time, he was afraid the clock would start flashing red. For Midoriya, it would be like a death sentence. Tamura. Idiot. The first attack sent him flying into the air, but he was able to regain his composure and land on his feet once again. A little water won't stop me, but you seem to be on your last legs. I commented on this to run in his direction until that jet of water was so close that Tamura bent his knees and slid his whole body to the ground to continue advancing, this until he approached Midoriya again and tried to grab him by the head. Izuku I won't fall for his tricks twice. He thought about his next attack, so eventually he would strike the arm joints with his forearms to paralyze him, and then follow that up with a powerful knee to the stomach. Izuku felt his strike had been effective because he felt his knee connect, but something wasn't right. He thought this was enough to disarm and arrest him. But his eyes filled with worry. Tamura. What's with that look? Has reality hit you yet, kid? Indeed, it was that simple. Tamura tricked Izuku into believing he was going to attack his head directly, and instinctively, Izuku believed it. He defended himself against a maneuver that never materialized, and then placed his hands on the crustacean's knee, which withered another part of his body. But the knee strike was so powerful that he had to brace himself and shift his weight onto his feet to avoid falling as before. Tamura. That guy has a lot of stamina, my hands hurt so much they're even shaking, if I hadn't stopped the blow I might have been left breathless. Then Izuku pushed him away again with another jet of water from his right hand, but Tamura dodged it again by sliding to the left to wither another part of his armor. Izuku If I keep going like this, he's going to kill me. She was afraid of dying like any human being, but it would be worse because if she did, she would leave behind her mother and the two friends she had made during this time. It was like a vicious cycle where Tamura kept closing in to damage his exoskeleton, and Izuku kept pushing him away. He was at a point where his armor was so tight he couldn't even move properly. The leader of the attack could have taken advantage of this to grab him by the neck, but instead, he just raised his judgmental fingers. Tamura. I must admit, you were a good warm-up for the main act. Anything you'd like to say? Izuku SSI. The armor, which was already so withered that it had almost lost its red tones, barely spoke in a low tone and I had no chance, in this form I couldn't beat him. But in another one, yes. Tamura. I'm all ears. He said in a mocking tone without moving his fingers. But before he could listen, Izuku, gathering all the strength in his worn-out arm, slammed his fist into the Omnitrix dial located in the middle of his chest. Tamura. You idiot. He didn't even have the chance to rest his middle fingers on his neck because of a powerful green light that burned his retina. But what? The pale man received a powerful counterpunch, even more forceful than before, which sent him crashing to the ground. But he got back up with a furious look, and the tick of scratching his neck returned. Tamura. What? Where's the other one? Who are you? Without knowing what was happening, he now saw a completely different being. It was a humanoid with the characteristics of the Tige from Bengala. Despite this, he noticed how some parts of its skin were badly damaged, and the symbol it had on its chest was the same as the other one, so he thought. Tamura. Is your quirk one of multiple transformations? I didn't expect that. I knew there were users among their ranks who could change their appearance, but not two different versions. Izuku R. I'll tell you one thing, you horrible-looking man. This time, in the form known as Wrath, he pointed a judgmental finger at Tamura. You're going down, Manitas. Before the mighty Wrath, Tamura. It might not be noticeable, but you can see the open wounds from my quirk in his fur. It just needs a few more touches and it's finished. Handyman. That nickname really bothered him. He even scratches himself so hard that drops of blood come out. Do you face the inevitable by making fun of it? Fine, if that makes you feel better. Nor was he going to give the tiger the satisfaction, and behind his mask a peculiar, almost macabre smile could be seen. The man with his hands would say nothing more as he ran towards Wrath, ready to grab him by the neck again. Izuku realized this, not the attack he was about to launch, but what he was plotting. Tamura. But for your information, my name isn't Manitas. Jump as high as possible to avoid Wrath's attack, which would be a direct hook to the ribs. My name is Tamura Shigaraki. During the jump, he did a somersault so that his head was down. He was going to grab his left arm and finish disintegrating him. Wrath. Was going to happen, was the perfect word for what was coming. Because that two-legged animal slipped its right arm under the left one and thus was able to grab its wrist, avoiding direct contact with its skin. Izuku R. Let me tell you something, Tamura Shigaraki. You can fool Mr. Krabs all you want. Then he attacks him, throwing him to the ground so hard it would shatter, and the moment he releases him, the white-haired man's body obeys Newton's law of motion, causing the villain to rebound off the floor. He takes advantage of this to deliver a powerful punch that impacts his ribcage. Izuku R. But don't even try it with me, freak. Tamura. Puaj. The final blow he landed did have effects, even his own breathing was altered. It also made him back away, and when he stood up again, he realized something else. Tamura. Cough cough. What the? My hand. How? It broke her wrist so her hand was dangling, but there was no time to process it. Izuku R. Excuse me, did I break your wrist? I only greeted you like a man does. He said with an arrogant smile that showed his fangs, already being a meter away from the guy, who didn't think twice and attacked him with a side kick. Tamura wouldn't say anything because that would waste time, but he positioned his other hand to attach it to his chest, along with his arm, to defend himself. When his kick connected, he sacrificed some ribs, but he touched his skin with all his might to reactivate his quirk. The advantage of this was that in this form, that shell no longer protected him, and that limb deformed so much in just 2 seconds that his flesh was exposed and blood gushed out. But it didn't last long, because he gave up his right leg, gathering the strength to plant it in the ground, and then the tiger gave Shigaraki a powerful blow right in the chin. Izuku R. I may not be a genius like the tadpole, but I am the king of combat. He let out a euphoric shout and roared out. Even though one of his legs was bleeding and hurt when he moved it, he wasn't going to let weakness defeat him. The villain of decay still lay on the ground. He had already gotten up from the water attacks, but I would swear those blows felt like being hit by a car, his breathing ragged, not only from lack of air but also from rage. And when he put his hands up to try to get up, a shadow eclipsed him. Tamura. Damn Fanfa. Ah, Izuku R. This is for Aizawa. Nobody messes with Ua, and especially not with Wrath. He couldn't defend himself against what he couldn't even see, but he felt his left arm being pulled in the opposite direction and even twisted, although the worst came when Wrath violently stepped on his shoulder with his only good leg and, making a twisting motion, twisted his arm until he heard the crack. Tamura. Ah, he couldn't take it anymore and Tamura let out a scream of absolute pain, because not only had he broken a couple more bones, but he had also stretched his muscle fibers so much that he had completely torn them, and if that wasn't enough, his shoulder was out of place. Izuku R. Now tell your boys to surrender or I'll do the same to your legs. He released his arm, which fell to the ground, and immobilized him by stepping on his neck. That stupid power really hurt me. I can't move my left leg and I don't think I can endure the pain much longer. Understand. The only response he got from the pale villain was a chuckle which grew louder and more manic as time went on. Tamura. And let me tell you something. Gusto turned her head so that he could see one of her crimson eyes and accompanied it with a huge, unnatural smile. That as a child he was a really good actor in school plays, Nomu. Those cries of pain, the sudden frights, and the despair in his eyes were merely an allusion to Izuku's furious nature, a way to cloud his judgment with emotion and the confidence of victory. Something Wrath failed to recognize, and now he would pay the price. That's why he could barely react when the Nomu delivered a devastating blow to Wrath, who he was struck by a devastating blow from the beast, and Izuku couldn't dodge because of its speed, so he cushioned the blow by forming an X with his arms. In any case, the blow was absorbed. Wrath's tough bones began to crack and he was sent flying down the stairs, where he got up with his left leg aching and trembling. Izuku Oh, so you're calling your pet? Well, you have to. He said this so that the claws between his knuckles would grow a few extra centimeters. The black beast began to run at a normal speed. Why? He was just going to toy with him until Shigaraki delivered the final blow. Speaking of him, he gets up even though he faked pain. That didn't make him indestructible. But he's there once, just like a zombie. He would just watch the fight, while trying to adjust his shoulder as best he could. Izuku Let me tell you something, Nomu designated to defeat All Might. If you think you can beat Wrath, you won't, because I'm bigger and stronger. The Nomu, as if it were a lone hunter, walked slowly, toying with it until I was right in front of it, and the difference in height was very noticeable. Izuku Well, aside from the fact that you're taller and stronger, that just means that the taller you are, the more. Before he could finish his sentence, a blow struck Izuku in the stomach. The force of the impact sent him flying into the air, and he landed near the water's edge of the plaza. He groaned in pain but only scratched the back of his neck. Izuku Ouch, I don't remember how it continued. As he stood up, he saw the bird-headed monster leap to stand in front of Izuku. Izuku I know. The taller you are, the more painful the fall will be. Following that logic, if you're taller than me, that's a huge disadvantage. He yelled as if nothing was wrong, while starting to run, or however he could, against him. The black monster roared like an animal, throwing another punch, but this time his fist was embedded in the ground as Wrath dodged it. Wrath then seized the opportunity to strike the arm he had used to try and hit him, and as it reached his head, he plunged one of his blades into the villain's eye. The eye burst, releasing a great roar that echoed throughout the complex. Izuku See what I mean? Now feel the power of the mighty Wrath. The Nomu uses its left hand to lift Midoriya, who is on its right shoulder. Midoriya reacts quickly enough to jump away and get behind it. The Nomu turned in his direction. Izuku had that same smile which overflowed with confidence and a touch too much arrogance, but it would disappear when the eye socket that had burst began to regenerate. Besides, when he felt the impact of hitting him, it was similar to hitting a mountain. Izuku Regeneration and shock absorption. Is that how they're going to beat him? Maybe it's just a battle of attrition. Well, whatever happens, happens. Come here, monster. At the moment he said it, the beast was already halfway there. However, the air, especially the ground, began to feel cold, to the point that the Nomu's legs froze, forcing it to stop abruptly. A trail of ice led from the Nomu to its source, which was the student Todoroki, who, along with other classmates who had managed to escape the League's trap, had gathered there because of the scream. Bakugo. Die. The explosion boy screamed with fury as he threw a devastating bomb at his face. Kirishima. Wait for me, Bakubro, just like we planned. For his part, the redhead gave a strong blow to the Nomu's frozen legs, realizing this. Bakugo. The plan is for me to kill this wretch. He would say, in midair, that he would bring his palms together and, as if from a cannon, unleash another explosion into his chest. Meanwhile, he continued to freeze thanks to Todoroki's ice. He returned a punch so strong that Kirishima barely had time to use his quirk to send him back several meters until he was next to Izuku. Christmas. Dude, that stuff really hits hard. He complained, rubbing his arms, but looked to the left. Hi, how are things? Then he looks ahead to see how he's going and when to get in, but his brain takes action and he turns around again. Hey, wait, who are you? Midoriya. He asks why he had the same symbol on his chest as on that bump on his arm. Izuku R. Ah, scream of anger. Let me tell you something. Eijiro Kurashima. He walks towards the boy, who simply backs away with his arms raised. Do you think you can just come along and save Wrath? Well, let me tell you something. Wrath saves himself. Kirishima. Hey bro, time out. Did he say the same phrase twice? Your leg, what happened to you? I mention this because the disintegration left an open wound on his skin. We should probably go. Come, I'll go with you. Izuku R. But what did I tell you? Wrath only saves Wrath and he's no coward. Then he grabbed the redhead by the head, which had taken him by surprise. He'd always thought of Midoriya as a more sensible person. But he only spun him around until he saw Tamura. Do you see that freak? That guy commands the Nomu what to do. His power can disintegrate animal cells in seconds. If you fight him, be careful or he'll turn you into mush. Kirishima. Oh yes, VVVVVVVVV. We already saw it at the beginning, thanks for the information brother. Izuku R. Yeah, whatever. Now stop bothering me. He said he'd run and go help Bakugo against the Nomu. Kirishima. Wow, he looks a lot like Bakugo, but how manly. He thought of it so he could accompany him. Tamura. Damn kids, this is taking longer than it should. If the time limit passes, the pro heroes will come and I won't be able to kill Olmich the way I wanted. His mind was in chaos, and with his left arm already back in place, he scratched his neck intensely until he left a scratch scar. Nomu. Stop playing with your food and kill them already. Euphoric cry. His owner's words were etched into his exposed brain, and the beast growled like a rabid animal and began to cackle with pure madness until he used all his strength to free himself from the ice. The shockwave was so strong that it created a shockwave similar to All Might's smash that pushed the boys back. Todoroki. Get yourselves together. I'll try to stop him as much as possible. I shout to put my hands on the ground and create great ice barriers. Bakugo. I was one shot away from blowing his head off, but you ruined it for me. He said, recovering from the shock, and yelled at Izuku in Wrath's form. Perhaps a nuclear explosion will make him think twice. Izuku R. That pellet didn't even do anything to me, and you're thinking of going kamikaze. He warned her to grab his arm before he released all the nitroglycerin he had stored in his gloves. You don't make me laugh, said Wrath. Bakugo. Take your filthy furry hands off my Deku, or do you want my great kaboom to bury you too? Kirishima. Guys, please just deal with that. He got in between Midoriya. What if you used that form you mentioned on the bus instead? Izuku R. I have a better idea, Eijiro Kirishima. The redhead nodded. I will transform into that form that Wrath mentioned to you before. Kirishima. But I'm telling you about that. Before he could say anything, the alien tiger started running and all he could do was sigh in defeat. Todoroki, meanwhile, was creating a wave of ice to slow the monster down, but it only slowed it down by half a second. That is, until fragments of his ice began to appear on the right side of his body. On the other side of the last wall, the bright greenish light made its appearance one last time, and a giant fist broke through the ice barrier and slammed into the Nomu's face, leaving it only able to retreat, confused and dizzy from the attack. Tamura. Have the heroes arrived yet? Wait, they're not the heroes. The clock shattered, revealing one of the many forms Izuku possessed, now adopting the DNA of a giant reptile with light brown pigmented skin. He was the same height as the Nomu and had the typical emerald eyes and the insignia on his chest. Upon closer inspection, his leg had an open wound, along with others on his body. That alone would tell him who this guy was. Tamura. How many times do I have to deal with the same disgusting guy? Her tone of voice gradually increased as she went from a whisper to a raised voice. Nomu didn't see that blow coming, although it was powerful enough to confuse him, and making him retreat would take more than that. And Izuku knew that well from his fight with Wrath. Izuku H. Don't even dream about it, I'll give you time to recover. Then he lunges at the beast because he gave a right hook that made Nomu swing in that direction, followed by another but with his left arm that would make it back. Kirishima. What a show. Midoriya has everything under control. He mentioned this while raising his arms in excitement, and he had a smile that showed his shark teeth. Come on, bro, you can do it. Bakugo. Don't rest on your laurels, you extra imbecile. How long do you think he was there? Todoroki. If we take into account that fog villain, I suppose between 9 and 16 minutes. I mention joining together while resting his ice side in case Midoriya needs reinforcements. Kirishima. Yes, but what does that have to do with it? Bakugo. Everything. Back with Izuku and the Nomu, they were exchanging blows frenetically, some connecting and others being blocked equally. Midoriya had purple bruises on his body while the monster regenerated bruises, broken bones, and hematomas resulting from Homungosaur. Nomu lashes out with a direct blow to Homungosaur's chest, but the green-eyed creature responds with a cross attack, using the length of his right arm to interpose the other while connecting his fist to the monster's cheek, causing him to lose his balance. Izuku H. That's it. We're almost there. The blow from the Saurian landed squarely on the side of his head. However, Izuku's fist began to tremble because the Nomu absorbed all the damage and was able to take advantage of the situation to grab his arm and twist it to the point where his muscles stretched almost to the breaking point. Izuku H. No, he used his other arm, still damaged by Shigaraki's quirk, and delivered a powerful overhand strike followed by a headbutt that collided directly with the monster's brain. This finally made Nomu scream in agony, its brain causing a sudden surge of energy that Izulu couldn't escape. Crack. Izuku H. Seeing his arm broken and stiff, he let out a cry of pure pain, and responded with 3 more blows to his stomach. First name. Having broken his arm, he delivers a powerful kick to create distance and grab the sides of his head. The last blow really affected him, causing him to breathe heavily. Midoriya wasn't going to give up, he was going to fight with everything he had until the rest of the heroes arrived to rescue them. However, that didn't depend on the emerald-haired boy. A digital sound began at a high volume as the hourglass symbol flashed between white and red. Bakugo. There goes that nerdy idiot. Let's get him. I don't want a dead body on my conscience. He then uses the explosions from his palms to propel himself forward and go to where Deku is. Kirishima. I think so, but wait for me, bro. Run after him. Meanwhile, Izuku was still exchanging blows with the Nomu, but as he was nearing the end, the sound of the alarm slowed down and the noise decreased in volume. Izuku H. Please, give me 1 more minute. Izuku was well aware of his current limitations, an injured leg, a broken arm, and other pains that plagued his body and mind. But he didn't care. The question was, why? Is it the adrenaline rush of being so close to death? The fury of seeing his teacher almost murdered and having the goal of avenging Aizawa? Or is it perhaps that instinct that compels him to give his all until the end and protect everyone from those who do wrong? The answer to this question. They are all of them. Izuku H. Just 1 more hit. Although he intended to deliver 1 last blow, a red light appeared, so intense that it blinded his opponent. Therefore, Nomu wouldn't realize that when he made his counterattack, nothing happened. He only realized this because he didn't feel the Saurian's body hitting his knuckles because of that bright light, and being very close to the source didn't help at all. However, Tamura could clearly see behind that scarlet curtain the cause of his discomfort. Tamura. So you've finally revealed your true self, haven't you? He hesitates in his words. Even though the shadow of his battle beast eclipsed the young man, Tamura Shigaraki could see in great detail the young man in a terrible state. Just like the master of bandages, his suit or what was left of it was completely torn apart, not only exposing his body, but also the wounds along with the bruises that the members of his league made together. Izuku. Why can't I move? Everything hurts, but I don't have the strength to scream. Shis' knees buckled, forcing him to his knees as his gaze fell. His brain, in its human form, was processing tons of information at once, and he didn't know what to do or even move. He just remained static, similar to a vegetative state. However, he didn't know, but the memories from when he was born played back like a short film. Izuku. Am I going to die like this? It would be so easy, to fall and sleep to be at peace. He remembered the time his mother told him about the watch, how she trusted him enough to give him a chance to be a hero with it. He recalled how he met Yaoyorozu, they became friends at the beach and were classmates at UA. Finally, the conversation he had with Principal Nezu and his promise materialized in his mind. I only want one thing, and that is for you to use the Omnitrix for the greater good and never for your own convenience. Izuku. What am I thinking? I don't want to die. But if I do, it won't be on my knees. The visor of his mask had shattered, revealing his eyes. He struggled to react, his body trembling with pain, especially his legs, which barely moved. He stood up, his broken arm flailing with his movements, and raised his head, a defiant look on his face. He raised his only good hand, positioning it defensively, but his legs could barely support his weight. In the distance, his comrades could be seen running at full speed to his aid. Izuku. I can do this all day. Tamura. This isn't even funny anymore, kill it. The beast obeyed without question and, clenching his right fist tightly, prepared to end Midoriya's life. Midoriya closed his eyes, hearing his last name and being told to move away. When he was about to fall, instead of feeling his skull crack, Izuku only felt a powerful breeze that brushed against his skin and made his hair move backward. Izuku. What? The first thing he saw was how Nomu's fist was abruptly stopped by another hand. As he looked up further, he could see who it was. It was that same hero who had saved him in the past. Izuku. All might. All might. Youngsters, get Midoriya out of here. I mention this because Izuku would be dragged along thanks to Kirishima, who nodded. Midoriya couldn't utter a word. All the strength he'd mustered just moments before had vanished upon realizing the symbol of peace was there. He slowly closed his eyes until the last thing he saw was Shigaraki, his gaze chilling and unblinking, fixed solely on Midoriya. It wouldn't be the last time they met. In the end, the rest of the pro-heroes came to help keep the League of Villains at bay. They arrested most of those involved in the USJ attack, including the Nomu. The fight ended with All Might having to use more than 100% of his power to send it flying out of the facility. Few managed to escape. Among them was Tamura Shigaraki, thanks to the intervention of the villain from the mist. There were no casualties. Few students were injured, but the most affected was Izuku Midoriya, who was in intensive care at Hosu Hospital until Recovery Girl was able to heal him with her quirk. Although he was still recovering, all the effort he made during the attack forced his brain into a state of dormancy. One day later, in a hospital room lay two students who had suffered from the villain's attack. One was the patient, Midoriya Izuku, who was lying in a bed, and next to him was the class vice president, Yaoyorozu Momo. The latter had learned everything that happened and couldn't sleep that night thinking about what had happened to the boy. She felt terrible, and all she could do was wait. It's been 2 hours since I got here, Ash sighed wearily, her lack of sleep evident in the dark circles under her eyes, and to pass the time she used her phone to read the latest news. While she's engrossed in the screen, the green-haired boy slowly opens his eyes. The first thing he sees is the fan spinning above him, providing a pleasant breeze that awakens him more and more. Seconds later, he turns to his left, noticing the beige walls and a window offering a view of Musafato City high above. Finally, he turns to his right, where he sees the girl and, without thinking, says in an almost sleepy tone. Izuku. Yaoyorozu. Yaoyorozu. Midoriya. She shouts in surprise and happiness, thank goodness you woke up. She had one hand clutching her heart and was almost about to shed a tear, but she didn't want to worry him. Izuku. Awakening, he slowly adjusted himself to sit behind the headboard of the bed, and the scream woke him up completely. Wait. Where am I? How long has it been? The guys, are you okay? Each question had a tone of increasing concern, but those nerves disappeared when the girl took him by the shoulders. Yaoyorozu. Don't worry, Midoriya. You're in Musafatsu Hospital. You were asleep since yesterday, and you're healthy thanks to Recovery Girl's power. We were all able to get out of there. The pro-heroes came along with All Might. She mentions the boy with a comforting smile, who lets out a sigh of relief. Izuku. I understand, thank you for telling me. But before he could relax, the black-haired girl hit him on the head. Ouch, why was that? He said, surprised by it and seeing how her face changed from a happy state to an angry one. Yaoyorozu. What do you mean, why? They almost killed you there. If All Might hadn't arrived at the last minute, you. She lost the struggle to hold back her tears, and they streamed from her eyes down her cheeks. Izuku. Forgive me, he couldn't stand to see her cry, especially if he was the one responsible for those tears, and all he could do was hug her to calm her down. It was the impulse of seeing how they had left Aizawa and almost hurt Tsuyu. I didn't think about anything. I just wanted justice for them. Yaoyorozu could only return the hug. She was angry, but much more so for not doing anything about it at that moment, but she wouldn't tell him that. It was a moment of absolute silence, although to an expert it might seem tense. For the duo the lack of noise was so comforting and cozy that their tears dried and the flames of anger cooled. Yaoyorozu. He sighs, wanting her to break the embrace, even though he wants it to stay that way. Someone could come in and complicate things. Okay, I understand your point, but you really worried me, you know. Izuku. He just realized what he had done and felt embarrassed by it. But I'm relieved that everyone is safe, especially you. Yaoyorozu. The last words ignited a spark within her, and she simply averted her gaze, hiding her blush but glancing at him sideways. Just promise that you won't expose yourself like that said, to look at him again face to face promptello Midoriya Izuku. Izuku. I promise you, he states with complete certainty. If I fail, I'll let you hit me with a stick. He jokes, eliciting a small laugh. Yaoyorozu. Haha, I'll take you up on that. Once the place was relaxed, they just talked to pass the time. Thanks to the closed door, nobody could hear them, except for one person, that same person with the ability to hear thanks to some extensions. Hyokujiro was leaning against the wall, and behind her back she connected her jacks, able to listen to the entire conversation. She did it not to eavesdrop, but to know if he was awake or with someone. But the more she heard, the more she felt that if she entered with Yaoyorozu, she would be in the way. Kyoka. I'd better leave. She sighs in defeat and unplugs her jacks. If I go in, I'll just make them uncomfortable. With no other option, she walked through the hospital corridors, lost in her thoughts, not noticing that as she turned the corner she bumped into another person and almost tripped. Kyoka. What? Ink. Oh, excuse me, are you alright? Kyoka. Oh no, don't worry, my bad for not paying attention. He said he'd turn around to see who it was, and when he saw her, he'd freeze, stunned by her almost identical appearance to a certain green-haired boy. Ink. Are you feeling alright, young man? He asks, tilting his head slightly in doubt. Do you need me to call someone? Kyoka. Oh no, it's just that he looks a bit like a friend who's here, but it doesn't matter, excuse me. He says, scratching the back of his neck because of the current situation. Ink. Don't worry, dear, although I could ask you a question. Ask with a kind smile. Kyoka. Of course you need it. Answer with the same kindness. Inko. Do you know where room F20 is? I've already gotten lost in 2 hallways and the nurses are on break. Kyoka. That's, Midoriya's mom's room. No wonder they look alike. Are you looking for Midoriya Izuku? Right where it doubles and 4 doors forward will be there. Inko. Thank you very much, young man, but where do you know my son from? She asked, intrigued, since she had no knowledge of her. Kyoka. Oh, I'm one of your classmates and I came to say hello. Liar. Inko. Ah, I understand now. What happened to them all must have been terrifying. He says to put his hands on her shoulders as a way of thanking her. I'm glad they were able to get out of there, and I'm very happy that my son has a good friend who visits him. Kyoka. Ha, don't even mention it. Her son's a crazy guy, in a good way, of course. She remained almost rigid at the show of affection, but she wasn't going to make her uncomfortable enough to reject it. Inko. I know what you mean, don't worry. Okay, I won't take up any more of your time. Thanks again. She lets go to make a brief reference and then leaves. Kyoka. Don't worry, but before the green-haired woman turns the corner, she turns around and raises her voice slightly. Wait, could you please not mention me if someone asks about me? I'm asking you nicely. She said, clasping her hands together in a pleading manner, because if Izuku found out she hadn't visited him, she would have to explain why, and that was something she didn't want right now. Inko. Sure, don't worry about it. Somewhat surprised, she agreed to her request. She wanted to ask why, but didn't want to interrogate her or bring up an uncomfortable topic, so she simply waved goodbye, leaving Jiro with only a sigh of relief. Following the attack, those affected were informed that their classes would be suspended for a week so they could return not only physically rested, but also mentally refreshed, as their first encounter with a criminal organization resulted in high levels of stress and anxiety. But the days passed peacefully, to the point that the whole week flew by, and on Monday, classes resumed for the 1A class. Everyone was present in the classroom. Some were talking with their friends about what they had done during the week, others were preparing their notebooks and supplies for class, but still others were just looking at their cell phone screens to kill time until the substitute teacher arrived. While Izuku was in his seat with his notebook, thanks to the confrontations in the USJ, he was able to get new data on the 3 aliens he had used on the last page he was drawing Homungosaur, although it didn't let him think. "Hey, did you see the news? Everyone was on screen except me." Toru spoke in a saddened and dejected tone. "It's hard for them to see you like that, isn't it? But all the news outlets made a big deal out of it." Kaminari, in a relaxed tone, throws his head back, as well as his hands. "It was inevitable. After all, we're the class of heroes who didn't have much support when attacked." The girl with the headphones contributed while playing with one of her extensions. "Who knows what would have happened if All Might hadn't shown up in time." "Don't say that, it kept me up all night." Mineta screamed in fright, crying comically. "Shut your mouth, you piece of shit." Bakugo angrily reprimanded Midoriya for taking him completely by surprise and scaring him by standing between them. But as expected of All Might, he was able to defeat that giant monster in a matter of seconds. Sato was at the entrance, so he could see it in great detail. "I wish I could have seen disappointed moment Midoriya with a pencil in his hand and a notebook with a half-finished drawing. "Are you kidding? You were amazing too, Midoriya, how you faced that villain with the tiger-like hands." The burly boy commented because he also saw that fight and even carried him to the ambulance when help arrived. "His name was Wrath. I must admit you surprised me with the way you spoke and fought. You seemed like a different person, bro." "Oh, it can happen, depending on the transformation. My more adrenaline-fueled behavior could have caused that. Anyway, I apologize if I spoke to you rudely." This sentence. "No worries, old man." The shark's teeth raised their thumbs in a sign of chill. He smiled kindly, so Kirishima continued talking to Shiro. Izuku went back to drawing, but this time he recreated the scene with Tamura. Kyoka, meanwhile, just watched and found it amusing how easily he got embarrassed, but she decided to get up and talk to him to see how he was, since she hadn't been able to at the hospital. "That guy with the mask. Remember every detail of that subject through the perspective of aquatic threat and wrath, his fighting style, his quirk, and especially the disturbing look of his. Perhaps this won't be the last time I see him." "Hey Midoriya," she greeted her friend with wires in her ears, but it was strange that she didn't say hello. "Perhaps you should analyze the transformation pattern to have better control when you need to change shape." "What?" I tilted my head, confused by the way my green-haired friend spoke in a rambling manner. "The Yoria are good in body shape. Maybe they should have chosen lichen because in the Latia language they follow me, then armadillo. Gray matter, maybe they should have started with armadillo threat first in case they had to escape in an improvised way. Okay, that's it." Noticing that it is no longer in orbit, it chooses the most optimal option. Sorry about this. When he said it, he used one of his jacks to stab the boy in the temple. Suddenly, Izuku felt a sharp prick, like a needle, followed by a strong chill that made him open his eyes and tremble. "Ouch, it hurts." That bastard was taken out and immediately covered himself up. "What happened?" "Jiro." I just turned to look at the person responsible and he rubbed the affected area. "Well, I was saying hello to you and you, being so silly, didn't even notice me." She complained in an almost annoyed tone and stood with her arms crossed while one of her extensions pointed at her friend. "Oh, sorry Jiro." Wow, that's how Kaminari always feels. He was so focused on taking notes about our encounter with that group of villains. He moves it a little so she can see. "It was noticeable from the way you spoke. It was very erratic and you were completely unintelligible." He said it humorously, which caused Izuku to blush with embarrassment and Jiro to laugh a little. "I see, haha. And speaking of that, how are you? Are you in any pain? Can you go and do the practical training sessions?" "I'm fine, I was only in the hospital for half a week. The doctor in charge of my care checked me every 12 hours and from what he told me I'm fine, but he recommends that I don't exert myself too much or even attend the heroic training sessions." "Oh, that's bad. I imagine you're going to follow his advice." "Dude, Husto remembered that she couldn't visit him on the first day, nor on the following 2 days, because she was already busy. I'm sorry I couldn't visit you. My parents were so worried that I couldn't go out the last few days. She was now the embarrassed one who looked away. Don't worry about it. I would have been happy if you were there, but I'm even happier to hear from Yaoyorozu that you're okay. He added, with a sincere smile and a thumbs up regarding the doctor. Just between us I'll say that I'll do my best not to repeat my mistakes at USJ. And what did you do in the meantime? Hearing his answer calmed her down considerably, but after seeing his face and that smile, her ears felt a certain warmth. I'm glad to hear that too, and anyway, I understand you want to give it your all, but prioritize your health, okay? Izuku simply nodded, and Jiro touched her chin, thinking. Nothing interesting really, but I talked to Yaoyorozu online about things and she recommended I read the PDFs of the heroism class theory. You too. On the second day of my stay there we also read, but only a little. Just as we were talking about her, I caught eye contact with the black-haired girl, and she responded by waving and smiling sweetly, which Izuku and Jiro also did, noticing as well. Did you read what I recommended? Well, training. Repeating the phrase Midoriya said in a low tone. Didn't even open it, but don't tell anyone, okay? While the duo continued talking, Mina Ishido watched everything unfold, resting a hand on her chin and analyzing the situation, forming several thoughts about the two of them. Then she simply shrugged and leaned back in her chair to greet Tsuyu. Hey, Tsu-eh. She almost fell if Asui hadn't caught her seat. Do you know who's teaching the class? Well, Professor Aizawa is supposed to be there, but I heard he's still in the hospital. Jiro wanted to continue chatting with his friend, but he was interrupted when the door opened, revealing a man completely bandaged, with a cane in one hand and a cast on his right arm. However, everyone realized it was their teacher, Aizawa. Everyone sit down. Class has begun. I speak aloud so everyone can hear and obey the order, even Jiro. Professor, are you sure you can teach the class under those conditions? I'm fine. Don't underestimate me, Ida, and don't shout. Excuse me, is that okay? The gravity girl whispered to avoid being challenged. But how much dedication? Kaminari joked, and others either commented or remained silent, waiting for the tired-eyed teacher to sit down. He did so after 3 minutes, clearing his throat to speak. Before class starts, I'll get straight to the point. As in every year since UA was founded, the sports festival will be held. It will begin in a few months, so I want you all to be better prepared, and there will be more practical exercises in heroism. Finally, a normal school activity. Most of the class cheered, and some even stood up. We'll be more popular than before, and everyone will be able to see me on TV. She was shaking happily. A set of floating clothes that was Hagakure. But if no one can see you, Shoji comically added, sitting next to her, causing the invisible girl to pout slightly. Nah ha, my shine will outshine all the cameras. Don't make a sound. Behind the bandages, the remnants of her hair began to rub as her eyes shone intensely, and with just that, they lowered their heads. I don't understand, what's so special about this sporting event? Asked the boy with dwarfism. Are you kidding? I question Midoriya to turn around. It's one of the most important events at UA. Many people will watch it live, including professional heroes. I've never missed one. Professor, don't you think it's very appropriate given what happened a week ago? I question the vice president. What if the league attacks again? The facilities where it will take place will have triple the security of before, and just because we were attacked doesn't mean we'll be intimidated into abandoning our plans, right? Nobody says anything. I take that as a yes. Besides, these kinds of events, before Quirks, the Olympics were a sports festival. Here in Japan, after humanity evolved to where it is, it's been celebrated as a representation of those games. That's why I ask you to take it seriously and don't hesitate to give it your all, because it will be your first impression of the heroes. Upon hearing that, they couldn't help but think about them. Some became overly excited, others more thoughtful about how they would fare, and still others were debating whether or not to attend. It's clear that to gain experience and connections, they have to join a hero agency. There isn't much time. They only have 3 attempts throughout the year, and it starts the moment they enter and demonstrate everything they can do. Not giving their all will not be tolerated. Is that clear? Yes, sensei. Time skipped 2 hours. As time passed, The reckoning began, where everyone rushed forward like crazy to win, being challenged by Iida, but nobody paid attention to him and only Midoriya walked calmly. Midoriya, When I heard that voice say her last name, I thought it was Yaoyorozu. Oh, hi Yaoyorozu, why are you running? He asked politely, noticing how he was running to catch up with him. Sorry, I rushed over to see if we could have lunch together, she confidently stated, showing that she had a convent. Sure, I don't see a problem with that. I was going to the cafeteria anyway. He wasn't as nervous as before thanks to the time they had known each other, but he couldn't help feeling a little overwhelmed when he approached her. Excellent. I also wanted to invite Jiro, but she left long before you. I'm sure we'll both find it. She nodded, and when they were about to go to the school cafeteria, Principal Nezu was standing in front of them, almost tripping because they didn't see him due to his short stature. Director Nezu, we apologize, we didn't see you. The girl said in an almost alarmed tone, thinking he was going to get angry. Don't worry, Miss Yaoyorozu, it's my fault for not greeting you earlier, and by the way, Mr. Midoriya from its paw, it pulled out a metal lunchbox. Shall we have lunch? I need to talk to you about some things in your study plan. It was really just an excuse. Oh, I'd really like that, but can we talk later? Don't worry, go accompanied by a calm smile, she encourages Izuku. It will be another time. Thank you so much and sorry Yaoyorozu. He says goodbye as he accompanies the director to his office, and the raven-haired woman waves from a distance. I'm so sorry to bother you on a school day, especially during recess with your friend. Don't apologize, Senior Nezu, but are we going to talk about my study plan or? He glances behind him to see if anyone was waiting. About us. Don't worry, everyone's on break in the teacher's lounge and they won't come in unless I ask them to, I said to calm the boy's paranoia, and he just sighed. How are you feeling after what happened? Okay, but after leaving the hospital I've felt a bit uncomfortable, like someone is watching me all the time. It's normal to be anxious. If you want, I can give you a notice so you don't have to come to class for a few days. No, it's not necessary, thank you. It's already too much that the doctor won't let me train properly. I'm commenting, embarrassed by how they want to give him help he doesn't need. But if it's not too much trouble, what exactly do you want to talk about regarding Omnitrix? Okay, let's get down to business. As you know, the sports festival will take place over the course of a month, and all freshman classes will be given a week off to train at the UA gym and prepare, right? That part doesn't matter, it's just important because it will keep our eyes on the professional heroes, but what does that have to do with the clock? Will I not be able to participate? He asked himself that question thinking that it would attract the attention of the wrong people, or that someone would know about the Omnitrix and hunt him down, or on the other hand, that the Omnitrix is an accessory, not a quirk, and might be considered cheating, even though no one at UA except him knew of its existence. Midoriya, can you wait a minute? I questioned, tilting my head to the right, because I was literally muttering what I was thinking. No, please continue, said, embarrassed by that nervous tick he had when he thought out loud, and just put his head down. Okay, the point is that we'll use that week off to really develop the skills of each alien form. I read the reports on your performance at the USJ and I'm proud of how you handled the situation, but you could have died, and that was mainly due to your lack of knowledge about each alien's capabilities. Until you become familiar with them, and when it really matters when you participate, if you want to, of course, we'll put what you've learned to the test. Izuku wouldn't say anything about this. He knew the strengths and weaknesses of each form he'd used, but since he'd only trained the physical aspects, he'd never delved deeper into them, like why a bunch of bandages could be a living being, or how a collection of crystals could literally be considered life forms. Or the time he was able to split his jaw in 4 when he transformed into lichen. However, he remembered that even in his strongest form, he couldn't last against the Nomu monster, something that only made him stare at the wall, and for some reason, Bakugo's words from combat training stuck in his head. I sometimes think I'm not good enough at using this. Midoriya, those kinds of thoughts are useless, it's better to discard them and focus on your goal. He took a sip of his tea. He wasn't good at talking about these kinds of topics, so he was just looking for the simplest, but most effective, answer in his opinion. Understand I wasn't entirely convinced, but I wasn't going to turn him against me. By the way, where will we train? I suppose at the gym, right? I've actually reserved the training field where you did your practice on the first day of class. That's where we'll start, and I'll give you instructions on how to train. He checks the time on his computer. I think you should go back. Aizawa will punish you if you're late. That's right. Can we continue talking tomorrow? Of course, my door is always open, and now I apologize for taking away your quality time with Miss Yaoyorozu. I mention this, but it causes the boy's cheeks to blush. Meanwhile, Yaoyorozu was with her friend Jiro, who, along with other classmates, included Tokiyami, who couldn't find another place to sit and asked for permission, and Todoroki, who was in the same situation as his crow-headed classmate. Tokiyami, are you planning to participate in the sports festival or are you just going to support us from the stands? Consult the blonde guy with electric power. Of course, yes, you heard the professor. We have to go so the heroes start noticing us and that will make things easier when the internships arrive. You're right, but that doesn't mean we should neglect our studies because after the internships come the exams before the holidays. I'm contributing Yaoyorozu because, as the class vice president, I was already aware of the course schedule. Come on, don't worry so much about it, besides, it's still months away. A proposito Midoriya podrá participar, pregunto Tokiyami. Definitely, if the guy is better than Professor Aizawa, the best question is what form he plans to use. I remember him saying he had 10, but he didn't show them all. Kaminari replies that he gave him a light tap on the shoulder. Well, the festival always had 3 phases, the last one was always a combat phase on a platform, the raven-haired woman says while eating a portion of her pork steak. If I get there, I could use that giant dinosaur monster, right? Kaminari thinks that after finishing speaking he'll drink a bottle of juice. I think it would be best if he used his armor drill form. As he said this, he looked towards the corner and a slight red tint appeared on his cheeks as he remembered the combat training with the green-haired boy in that transformation. I think it could be his mummy version. He seemed to do well against Bakugo. Jairo noticed her friend's sudden action. The rest ignored it, but she wouldn't let it go unnoticed. I accidentally saw several of his forms in his notebook. One caught my attention, a charred man in flames. That caught Todoroki Shoto's attention. Todoroki, what do you think? Kaminari asked, feeling a little uncomfortable that the bicolored boy wasn't saying a word. Leave him be. Todoroki is a man of few words. He would defend his childhood friend, even though the friend didn't respond. Time skips 2 hours, end of class. Monday's class had come to an end. Professor Aizawa had left early because he had to go to his daily medical checkup in the infirmary and left the student representatives and the rest of the class in charge of locking up the classroom. Jiro, Yaoyorozu, do you have anything to do this afternoon? The horned, pink-skinned companion asked directly but energetically, also sporting a cute smile that showed her teeth. No, just do my homework at home and read a little. Why? The raven-haired girl said as Jiro just shook her head. Perfect, how about we all go out together with Toru, Uraraka, and Susu? That way we can all get to know each other better. It could be, what do you think? I asked the rich girl. Hey, move aside, we want to get out. Siro shouts, looking for a place to slip away. A large group of students had crowded around the door of classroom 1A, all hoping to catch a glimpse of the would-be heroes who had emerged victorious from the attack on USJ. But others had different reasons for coming. Blocking the exit from classes is not typical of UA students. We demand to be allowed to pass. He exclaims loudly while moving his arm up and down like a robot. With those glasses, you're blind, 4-eyed. Can't you see they're looking at the competition? Wow, they're so perceptive, and is that what Class A is like? Honestly, that's disappointing, considering it's supposed to be a heroism course. Among all those gathered, a boy of average height spoke. His eyes were purple, as was his long, spiky hair, and he had dark circles under his eyes that made him look serious and tired. Don't misunderstand us like that without even knowing us. As president, his duty was to defend the reputation of his class as well. That doesn't matter. Did you know that some of the guys from the support course, like the mechanic, took the test to be in the heroic military group? Where are you now? She gestured with her hands to her pockets and just then locked eyes with Midoriya, who was confused by the situation. Similarly, the Academy gave us another opportunity to continue studying here, and thanks to the results that will be presented at the end of the festival, the director might consider transferring someone from general to heroic and diverse. Izuku, like others, felt that pressure in his chest. Now he thought that if he didn't give it his all this time, it would be the end for him. The green-haired boy only approached step by step until he was with Iida, something the purple-haired boy noticed, but didn't give it much importance. "Are you perhaps declaring war on us?" Midoriya asked, intrigued by that threat. "Think about it however you want, but if they get in my way." Now look around at the whole class, which was just waiting to see what would happen. I'll wipe them off the map. Each day that passed meant the festival was getting closer, and all the classes from then on were calm, first doing a theoretical part and then applying it in the training in the heroism classes. That was until the last week of June. I think that's how it was, correct me if I'm wrong, when all the first-year students, especially Class A, were training in the school gym, strengthening their quirks as well as their bodies. The threat of being expelled was a good motivator for them, while others were out there doing what they could. In the halls of UA Academy, last day for the sports festival. "Midoriya, my brother." He wrapped his arm around her neck in a manly embrace. "Hey, can you help me with the weights today? I'm going to try to break Shoji's record." The red-haired boy extending his left arm with determination. "Hi Kirishima, I'd like to, but I can't today." With eyes closed and palms together in a gesture of apology and with a slight tone of sorrow. "Again, look, we've got the sports festival just around the corner and I don't see you with us unless it's cardio." I mentioned this somewhat disappointed because I was looking forward to training with him and I was just walking with him. It's complicated to explain, but just then, her cell phone alarm went off, which only shows a specific time. "I have to go, sorry." He breaks free from his friend's grip and runs off in a hurry. Just a few meters ahead he bumps into Jiro and greets her as he passes by. She simply returned the greeting, somewhat puzzled, but only turned her gaze to Kirishima seeking an answer, who just shrugged, also not knowing what was going on. "Lately I haven't been able to talk to Midoriya as much as I wanted, that just becomes... I don't even know how I should feel about it." The girl had these thoughts. She knew these dates were of utmost importance, yet she hoped to share a moment with him together. Maybe so. The next day, in the middle of a city stands a huge stadium shaped like a six-sphere. Outside, it's surrounded by numerous stalls selling food and handmade goods. All those who wanted to see the festival are waiting in lines, their numbers controlled by security guards who allow them entry gradually. This way, they can prevent any suspicious activity and also give the participants extra time to prepare. The moment of truth had arrived. For those brave souls who had trained until they were exhausted and even nearly fainted, they could now show the results. Class A was waiting in the co-ed locker room. Some talked about what they were preparing for this year, while others just checked their phones until the time came. "Man, I was hoping I could wear my hero costume this time." With a slightly disappointed tone, he puts on the gym uniform sweatshirt. In fact, everyone had one, that electric boy. "I wonder what the first round will be like," Sato said, clasping his hands together. "It doesn't matter who we get, but how we act when the time comes," Tokiyami stated seriously, and Shoji nodded in agreement. "This is so that we are all on equal footing with the other courses that are not heroic," Momo explains, who was sitting next to Izuku and tying her shoelaces, and upon seeing her friend, he asks her, "How are you feeling? Are you ready?" More or less. I feel prepared, but I don't want to get overconfident. I just hope there aren't any complications during my transformations." "Which one would it be?" They all looked strong. I asked one of the older classmates in Class A, who was Sato. "Sometimes when I transform, I have a time limit, usually between 10 or 15 minutes, but it can also be less, and since I don't have a fixed timer, only an alarm, it's like playing Russian roulette with luck." Midoriya, now that he thought about it, that could make things very difficult for him if he found himself in a serious situation, and he was about to start getting paranoid, but he felt the hand of the young raven-haired woman. "Don't get discouraged, we haven't even started yet. We're all going to give it our all, and our spirits would plummet if one of us gave up," she commented with a sweet smile that was contagious to the boy, who nodded. But being in contact with him, and with everyone witnessing it, she looked away, and Izuku did the same, both blushing deeply. The class laughed at their expressions. Jiro was just watching, playing with one of her jacks. She seemed annoyed, but her gaze shifted when Todoroki walked up to stand in front of Midoriya. Midoriya, in a sharp and serious tone, I call the freckled boy. Oh yeah, what's up, Todoroki? Now everyone would look at the boys, even Bakugo, who was sitting far away. This festival, as you know, is important for everyone. We didn't come here to have fun or for camaraderie, we came with a single objective, to win at all costs. And I'm realizing something. Even though your quirk makes you versatile in any situation, I believe I'm better than you, objectively speaking. Hey Todoroki. With pity in his mind, he watched as his childhood friend was basically challenging Midoriya. He knew Midoriya's nature, even what motivated him, but he didn't know if it was the right thing to say. Is Midoriya being challenged by one of the strongest in the class? Intrigued, she saw Kaminari sitting with Bakugo and Kirishima. The latter stood up. If we cross paths under any circumstances, rest assured, I will defeat you no matter what. If everyone sees it, the old man will also see what I'm capable of without his other half. His eyes widened in surprise. If he wasn't afraid of Shinsho's threat before, now he had to face Todoroki. Wait, why are we fighting amongst ourselves? We're all friends, right? Here we go again, and we don't need this. Kirishima, wanting to lighten the atmosphere, put his hand on Todoroki's shoulder, but Todoroki just brushed it aside. We didn't come here to make friends. Midoriya was still thinking. He already had a lot on his mind. Katsuki Bakugo, Shinsho from the general education course, and now Todoroki. Todoroki was still staring intently into his eyes, and just as the raven-haired girl was about to speak, the green-haired boy stood up. I don't know what you're trying to achieve with this. He paused briefly before continuing. I know very well about your abilities, that you are easily one of the best and can quickly get out of any predicament, whereas I have a limit when I use my quirk. I can't use my forms as I would like. Come on old folks, don't get down. Kirishima went back inside and was about to approach the freckled boy, but his voice interfered again. But you saw how other courses want to reach the top, and I also want to be at the very top. I plan to use the maximum capacity of every way I have. I clenched my fists tightly from Armadillo's destructive power, Wrath's fighting techniques, Diamond's durability, and even Gray Matter's intellect. The boy's way of speaking changed so much that he didn't even stutter anymore. So, objectively speaking, be careful if you want to challenge me. I understand. These two kept their eyes locked. It was a game of tug-of-war to see who would give in first. This lasted for the first 5 seconds until Iida arrived, telling everyone that they should leave. When they did, everyone left, and before Izuku did the same, Jiro with a smile patted him on the back and gave him a thumbs up. The stadium was already completely full, with rows divided between ordinary spectators and professional heroes at the top. UA employees, such as teachers, had a VIP room, and finally, the cameramen who worked for various news and sports channels. All right everyone, the moment you've all been waiting for has arrived, and today I'll be your commentator alongside the living mummy. A scream from the cabin located above a huge gate. I remind you that you kidnapped me while I was sleeping, Aizawa stated in a tired tone. Haha, as crazy as ever, I love it. But hey, look who's the first to appear. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Class A of the Hero course. As soon as the hero present mic finished speaking, the entire Class A made their appearance, all greeting the audience, although Midoriya was shocked by all the people who were watching him. There are too many of them, are there thousands? Midoriya said as he watched Mike begin to introduce the rest of the classes, from B, the general courses, support courses and even the business career were behind him. It's best not to dwell on it too much. After all, that's what life is like for a hero surrounded by the press and civilians. It's part of our training at UA. The class representative stated this with certainty. TCH, this is unfair. We're only here so the heroic course can show off. Some students from the regular courses complained, some of them murmuring, but the rest said it in a tone of voice that Class A could hear. Wow, they really hate us, huh? The skinny boy with cylindrical bumps on his elbows would say. You said it, will they feel threatened? What are you saying, Kota? The electric boy asked his companion who talks to animals, and the latter was embarrassed when the words were addressed to him and said nothing. Are you a man of few words? Like Todoroki, I point my thumb backward at that boy. Speaking of him, he was just walking along peacefully when he looked up and the first thing he saw was a man with red hair and a special suit that was emitting flames in a pattern, which also served as his mask. That guy was a hero, and not just any hero, but the number 2 hero, Endeavor, and also Shoto Todoroki's father. But going back to the boy with sclerotic eyes, he just lowered his head and looked at his left arm. Very good attention, your eyes here. A powerful crack of a whip was heard coming from in front of all the UA students, a woman in a sadomasochistic outfit and a thin white cloth covering her skin. No way, it's the 18+ heroine Mind Knight. It's so hot, oh my, she froze from the sharp pain that came from Kyoka's jacks. Damned pervertee said with disgust to Mineta, the rest already saw this as normal because of how often it happens. Greetings, first-year students, before we begin the first stage of the elimination rounds. The student with the highest score will now offer words of encouragement. What? Class A screamed because they already had an idea of what Bakugo would say, but he just ignored them and went up the stairs. Hey, how likely is it that we'll be in a good position with Bakugo as our representative? Jiro mentions that he is next to her and asks in a very low tone. Zero on the left. There are Damanshi put a hand to his face. Seconds later, silence was the only thing that remained in the atmosphere, until the explosion guy took the microphone, cleared his throat, and said, "I will be number 1 here." The shouts of protest were not long in coming. Everyone was obviously furious at the words of the ash-haired man. Damn 1A, do they think they're better than us? Don't trust yourself, you idiot. Class A students had better watch out. Who the hell called me an idiot? Say it to my face. You guys better give it your all here. Make it interesting or you'll die. Did I threaten everyone with death? Zero asked, confused. The rest looked at the ash-haired boy as they took away his microphone, then at Izuku with doubt. He just nodded, embarrassed by his friend. But something's up. Kachan isn't like that. He would have laughed at everyone and boasted about his strength. Could it be that he's taking it seriously? He murmured in the lowest voice, as only he usually does. Well said. Let's begin with the first stage, which is. He points his whip at the stadium's giant screen, which was displaying random letters until it formed obstacle course. The first stage consists of the 12 first-year classes running the entire circumference of the stadium to the finish line. They must be not only fast, but also clever enough to overcome the 3 obstacles on the track. Remember, to qualify for the second stage you have to be one of the first 42 to arrive. Thank you so much, Midnight, for the brief explanation. Everyone, please go towards the gate below us. Mike, can I go now? The bandaged man asked the blonde man with the mustache. It's this or sit with Ms. Joke. Aizawa simply approaches the microphone that was on the dashboard. Give it your all, guys. The students gathered where the race was going to start, but the strange thing was that it was a narrow corridor that the students squeezed into like a train at rush hour, and at the end there was a huge gate. Hey, don't push. Get out of the way. I can't breathe. There were so many complaints that it was chilling to be there, but Izuku tried to calm down and hunched over, but received several shoves that made him lose his balance in short moments. Cold might be useful for this occasion. I activated the alien selection and was looking for that way to get off to a good start, and when I was about to press the dial. At the last second the doors burst open, causing a massive panic where people ran like mad and pushed each other to get out. Wait a minute, I can't transform. Most of them crashed into him, preventing him from pressing the Omnitrix button or causing him to miss in the attempt. I'd better run. If you can't beat them, join them. So he forgot about his watch and just followed the course like everyone else. Looking ahead, I noticed some of my classmates were already in the lead, Todoroki at the front. When he turned around, his gaze met the boy's jade eyes, so without hesitation, I created a wall of ice right at the gate's exit. Midoriya stops abruptly. Damn it. Todoroki wasn't kidding about leaving me out. Then he activated his watch again, and when the silhouette of Cold was already there, he was going to press it. Don't stop. A girl from the general education class bumped into him to get through the frozen wall. This caused Midoriya to slam his palm hard against the clock. The remaining students who managed to get through were mostly able to use their quirks to overcome the ice Todoroki created on the ground. Mina used the acid secreted from her feet to glide as if she were skating, while Mineta used his spheres, sticking them to the ground to propel himself with jumps. Others, unable to use their quirks due to the situation or how to use them, could only walk very slowly to avoid falling. Among them was Jiro, whose feet were freezing. Thanks. Damn it. I clicked my tongue and felt a noticeable discomfort in my feet because the ice was so cold that it even froze my shoes. Jim, but here's a peculiar sound out of nowhere, huh? Behind the ice wall, a trail of green light caught the attention of the purple-haired girl. Seconds later, a sharp, powerful sound echoed, shattering the ice in less than a second. The fragments rained down like tiny diamonds, clearing a path for most of them. The one responsible was Izuku in his armadillo form. This wasn't the form he'd chosen, but he wasn't about to complain now. Midoriya, I thought you were already in the lead. Surprised, she fixed her gaze on him as he advanced and placed a hand on the ice. Don't worry, I'll be there soon. Having said that, with his left hand he retracted it into the cannon of his arm so that it would reappear in the form of a drill, and when he activated it, it began to excavate underground, making a tunnel so that he could travel underground. Whoa, Gusto lost his balance and fell because Midoriya in that form created a small earthquake as he passed underground. Damn it, it's green. Stop showing off, he shouts to the ground hoping he hears me, and when he looks up, he notices the tunnel hole. This gives me an idea. Wow, Aizawa, your class is really taking things to the next level. What are you teaching those kids? The sound hero shouted to his fellow commentator as he watched the race on the screens. Nothing. I didn't teach them anything they already know. Thanks to the attack at USJ, the kids have gone from having doubts about how to act to being prepared for an unforeseen situation. Fantastic, and we'll see that in the first phase of the race. He shouts fervently as the screen is pointed at Todoroki. Minutes after the race began, the first obstacle appeared when Mineta was struck by a robotic arm before he could catch up to Todoroki. Aren't those the robots from the entrance exam? A boy from Class B commented. A group of 0 points blocked the direct path to the race and were approaching the boys with the intention of taking them off the track. Localized objectives, the artificial voices of those metal giants were played, but a metal ball pierced one of their heads, causing them to fall to the ground. Everyone looked to see who fired, and the first thing they saw was Yaoyorozu, who had a cannon in position that she herself had created. We won't be able to handle so many. We'll all have to work together to get through this. A boy with dreadlocks spoke at the same time as he was activating his quirk, but Todoroki once again got ahead of the others. Shoto then uses his ice to attack the robots, forming enormous icy spikes that pierce the group of 0 points, freezing them and rendering them inoperable. I'm sorry, but they should move. Most likely, their size, plus being frozen, is causing them to lose their balance. As soon as he realized he would leave them behind to continue the race, Bakugo was following him with enormous anger. Most people got around as best they could. The 0 points, as predicted, fell, and 2 boys were trapped in the rubble. And if that wasn't enough, an earthquake struck, further unsettling those present. Seconds later, a crack formed in front of the rubble, then a hole. From this emerged Armadillo. If I continue at this pace, it will be impossible to catch them. I noticed several sounds coming from those ruins, Hiroshima, and another one that is peculiarly similar to this one, and they started fighting amongst themselves, shouting. Okay. Looking ahead, he noticed other robots of different models in the test, and those behind him began to climb the metallic colossi. I don't have enough of an advantage to fight everyone and then dig another tunnel. He would say, while drilling into the robots that he was approaching his position. However, he noticed how the next batch of robots had wheels instead of feet. That is. He struck the dial on his chest, and before he could attack that 1-point robot, he couldn't detect it on the scanner. In fact, he looked everywhere but saw nothing, and strangely enough, the metallic being began to convulse and sparks flew from the openings in its body. Wow, Aizawa, your kids are already ahead of the pack. What have you been teaching them? I screamed while focusing on Todoroki and Bakugo, who were hindering each other for first place. Nothing they didn't already know. If there's one good thing to come out of the USJ attack, it's that the kids gained first-hand experience of the work they're studying for. Now they can react quickly and find suitable solutions based on their quirks. I mention this because those robots that used to pose a challenge in the admissions test are now defeated like a house of cards in a blizzard. What's up, mummy man? Don't you think that robot over there is strange? I asked because on another screen a one-point robot was accelerating more than usual and seemed to be ignoring its main directive to avoid obstructing students. Could it just be that it broke down? It's common for that to happen in the support department. It could be, but I lost sight of Midoriya. Back in the race, most of the robots have been almost completely destroyed. The only one left is the one that abandoned its mission and decided to sneak onto the track. Meanwhile, Bakugo is battling Todoroki for first place. You should have chosen a better rival, a half-and-half dog. He approached because his explosions gave him acceleration as he ran to a point that could be to the left of Todoroki and grabbed him by the shoulder to push him. But his plan backfired because at the exact moment, Shoto took advantage to freeze Bakugo's feet, and he simply fell due to losing his balance, causing him to run until he reached the second obstacle. TCH. Emo de porqueria te mater. With a small explosion he was able to break the ice on his feet. What's that thing doing here? That robot was right behind him, moving at a high and constant speed. Bakugo was so angry at that moment that he didn't care why. Don't get in the way. When the robot was only centimeters away, its head exploded, leaving it missing one, Buddha's. Where the head had been, a gray shape appeared, and when it moved, a tiny being with very bulging green eyes and a horizontal black stripe dividing said eye sockets could be seen. Bakugo knew very well who it was. Deku. Furiously, he clenched his teeth until they ground together and activated his quirk again to gain momentum. Compared to the speed of Armadillo's drills, this robot's speed is suitable for racing. Izuku commented to himself, using that gray matter form, which he was going to go ahead until. Don't get in the way, tadpole. Bakugo exploded the robot's back so that he was able to pass it, and Midoriya began to lose his balance on the robot. Snails. It plummeted due to the total destruction of the robot and rolled until it was upside down. There is pain. It hurts. I don't think it can get any worse now. He placed his right hand on the ground, but it slipped almost into the void of the cliff and he recoiled in surprise. No, this is worse. Midoriya was about to fall if he hadn't reacted quickly. The depth was so immense that not even light could reach it, and if that wasn't worse, the distance was so absurd that neither he nor anyone else in his normal form could jump across. Midoriya thinks, Todoroki's ice bridge melted, and if I use that cable, I most likely have to consider the distance traveled. The speed I'll gain while holding onto it would give me 15 minutes, or 10 if I jump 30 centimeters. Either way, it's not an option, or I'll lose the transformation. At this rate, he would think of all the possibilities, none of which seemed convenient to the tiny, bug-eyed alien, until something occurred to him. Flashback. The day before, training camp. Director Nezu, I don't see the point in gray matter. I'm not saying it's a bad form, but for combat or in a critical situation, it's not the best. Ironically, he was speaking in that same way, which makes him breathless after exercising and testing all his physical limitations. Perhaps, but it's all circumstantial. Midoriya, the Galvan species, or as you call it, gray matter, are recognized for their incredible intellect and also for being able to analyze and solve problems instantly with the available data. I understand. Did you meet any Gavan, Mr. Nezu? He would take a short break, sitting with his legs crossed. When I was first, I took a sip of tea. Two of them, in fact, were in another section, although by the standards of their species, they were the most inept, and yet they were smarter than the average human. Seriously, smarter than even you. Now I was more curious about the topic that had come up again. No, Neversh took another sip of tea, but both her eyes and her tone showed suspicion. But you have to stick to the training plan. Try to move on to the next alien. He insists on this due to suspicions about the Omnitrix's transformation pattern. Okay, give me a second. The short gray man complained because the dial was at the back and was annoying to press. He finally succeeded, and the moment he did, the bright green trail appeared. Izuku transformed from gray matter form into a werewolf called Lichen. Perfect. The theory that the Omnitrix follows a specific pattern is now being proven. That's good. I had a feeling the post-transformations were ordered according to the roulette wheel, but on the other hand, should I show you my progress with the sonic howl? He said enthusiastically because he wanted to show his progress on his own. Of course, only. He puts on enormous earplugs. Okay, now give it a try. And, as a first step, he tensed the muscles of his snout, then moved his jaw in 4 opposite directions until a dry sound was heard in his ears and finally separated into 4 equal hinges. Finally, deep within his system, a sonic wave in the shape of a green conical cylinder was fired. The force of the scream was such that it broke the glass in the targeted section and made Midoriya himself abruptly recoil and finally close his mouth. "AHG, I'm sorry, Mr. Nezu." He grabbed his neck and stuck out his tongue because his throat was so dry after the scream. The force of the impulse took him by surprise. He almost fell, but he only managed to turn to his principal to see how he was taking it. "Don't worry, Present Mike had the same difficulty as you, but you have to regulate the sonic howl to counteract the thrust energy. I can do it, but let's not stop focusing on the other ways." He looks closely at the broken glass on the floor and turns his attention back to the wolf. "However, first you will focus on correcting your calculation error." "Yes, Director, I accept," with my head bowed. Findel flash back. He left behind his transformation along with his great intellect, but his cunning prevailed. So he took several steps back. He could hear the other participants approaching. There is no time to hesitate. He told himself this and ran again in a straight line towards the precipice, and at the moment he was at the edge, he put his strength into his legs and gained momentum for the oblique jump. Oh my God! When she reached the peak of her jump, she began to descend drastically, failing to make it to the other side. All this happened while the others arrived to witness the scene, including her friend Jiro, who stopped dead in her tracks, her expression a mixture of worry and fear. Midoriya, she ran to the edge of the abyss, but because the depth absorbed the light, visibility was poor. Some were curious to see what had happened to her, while others focused on continuing the race, using their quirks or crossing the metal cables that connected the two sides. Jiro was still searching for her friend, her eyes scanning the area, until her jacks detected a powerful crash, causing her to instinctively cover her ears. And suddenly Midoriya is back in the arena, rising thanks to the sonic howl, which allowed him to rise to such a point that he could grab the edge and climb up, but he touches his neck with an expression of displeasure. "AHG, I need water," she said with a very dry mouth, but anyway, she would leave, running with her legs and arms to gain speed. But Jiro heard a "what?" coming from her friend Yaoyorozu, who was clapping her hands over her mouth. This only heightened her suspicions. "What am I thinking about? My priority is not to arrive last." He shakes his head and continues running. After only a few minutes, most had already overcome the second obstacle with the help of their quirks or the cables connecting both points. However, one girl stood out from the rest thanks to some machines she had built herself and strangely called babies. Leaving that aside, the ones still on everyone's mind were Todoroki and Bakugo, who were competing to reach the #1 spot, but they had a bit of difficulty because of the last obstacle. It was a dirt path. Completely mined, and one wrong step and the explosions will send you flying. Upon reaching this point, Izuku was hesitant. "Thank God I stopped." He carefully observes the mined ground and pauses to think. There is no pattern to the earth being removed and I still don't have a deductive method to guess. Walking slowly and arbitrarily isn't an option. Perhaps another perspective could help me. When he pressed the button on his chest, another green light appeared, causing an eyesore for viewers on the screen. On the other hand, the rest of the boys were able to get through the second part of the race. Some passed carefully, others went full speed causing the mines to explode, and still others took advantage of their quirks to gain an advantage. In the last case, there was Jiro. She was connecting her natural hearing aids to the ground to send out low-frequency waves, thus accurately detecting all the planted mines. But when she looked to her side, she noticed a man covered in a crystalline surface, who was gathering these explosives. "Midoriya, what are you doing?" Since she's not responding, she clicks her tongue, annoyed at being ignored. "Whatever you want." Even in his wolf form, victory for first place wasn't guaranteed due to the gap between Todoroki and Bakugo. Therefore, he had a plan, where Diamond's resilience was key. The sinkhole had enough space to store many explosives, which were carefully and meticulously unearthed, so much so that Jiro wouldn't even notice him shouting from afar. Director Nezu said that my body structure had similar or superior resistance. I hope that's true. He shakes his head. "Stop doubting yourself, Midoriya, I must and I will win." He would form a diamond plate that would cover his entire body and without hesitation he would crash it into the mines. You should have chosen better who to declare war on, better than my other half. Bakugo, standing even, used one hand to propel himself forward and the other to dispatch the ash blonde with a single blow, but Todoroki defended himself by creating walls of ice that separated him from both of them. However, when he tried to use his left side to counterattack, they both felt a tremor in the ground. I swear if there are more robots I'll go too. Behind it appeared an explosion so powerful it was shaped like a mushroom cloud, like a mini atomic bomb. However, that wasn't the worrying part. What was truly concerning was that something was coming from within that cloud of smoke at incredible speed. His eyes widened, one in unexpected surprise and the other in intense frustration that would not only fill him with rage, but also cause him to stop sabotaging himself and accelerate as much as possible. Marking his territory, he advances with great speed, using the newly made diamond plate for support. I won't let a useless, dependent person like you, Deku, win. He now used both hands to increase the momentum even more. Not even in your dreams will I let you do it, Midoriya. The finish line was just a few meters away, he couldn't afford to settle for just second or third place. I'm not going to lose if the old man is watching. Although Midoriya saw him as a threat to his first place ranking, he gradually experienced acceleration, causing him to slowly fall, threatening to hit the ground. If that wasn't enough, the clock began to flash its red light, and before he knew it, he had already returned to his human form. Not again, not again. Despair coursed through his entire body again. He still had the diamond plate, but now he was losing, and the distance between him and Midoriya was widening. He was feeling sick, his brain began to ache from the anxiety of the moment. However, anger in times of crisis always made him rise. I'm not going to fail again. She still felt terrible about the attack on USJ, she felt she could have done so much more, and this festival would be proof of that. I'm going to my destination and I'm going to win. When he almost reached the ground, he did a complete turn with his arms so that the base of the plate hit the ground in such a way that another mine was activated, and he accelerated again. What happened between Todoroki and Bakugo? The winner is Izuku Midoriya. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and make sure to like and please hype this video. Now we will see you in the next video.